Look closely at any ancient painting, and you'll see more than just colors and shapes. You'll glimpse a hidden language, a secret waiting to be uncovered. What if I told you that some of history's most celebrated artworks aren't just masterpieces of beauty but elaborate puzzles, concealing blueprints, maps, or even lost technologies within their brushstrokes? These forgotten designs weren't placed there by accident. They were deliberate, carefully woven into scenes of everyday life by artists who risked everything to preserve knowledge that might otherwise have been lost to time. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of history's most fascinating mysteries, the forgotten blueprints buried inside ancient paintings. Think about the last time you stood before a centuries-old painting, lost in its details. Maybe you admired the play of light, the expressions on the faces, or the harmony of the composition. But what if those very details were hiding something far more extraordinary? Across cultures and eras, artists have embedded architectural plans, engineering schematics, and even coded messages into their works, disguising them as folds in clothing, patterns in tiles, or shadows in landscapes. Why would they go to such lengths? Some did it to protect forbidden knowledge from destruction. Others encoded their discoveries as acts of quiet rebellion. And a few may have left behind clues to technologies we're only now beginning to understand. This isn't just about art, it's about the untold stories beneath the surface, the whispers of innovation and ingenuity that history nearly erased. Imagine uncovering a medieval painter's sketch of a machine that shouldn't exist for another 300 years, or decoding a Renaissance masterpiece to find precise geometric calculations for a structure that defies its time. These aren't fantasies, they're real discoveries waiting in plain sight. So let's step into the world of these artist engineers, where every stroke of the brush could be a carefully placed clue, and every painting a time capsule of forgotten genius. The secrets are there. All we have to do is look. Take the intricate frescoes adorning the vaulted ceilings of Renaissance churches. What appears as mere decoration often holds the meticulous geometry of master architects. Look at the way Filippo Brunelleschi embedded the precise proportional systems of his revolutionary dome designs into the backgrounds of religious scenes, disguising engineering breakthroughs as ornamental flourishes. This wasn't vanity, it was necessity. In an era when groundbreaking ideas could be deemed heresy, art became the perfect cipher. The same brush that painted saints and angels also traced the skeletal frameworks of machines, the harmonic ratios of acoustically perfect spaces, even the trajectories of celestial bodies. Medieval illuminated manuscripts tell a similar story. Between gilded letters and biblical illustrations, scribes tucked away schematics for water mills, astrolabes, and siege engines, knowledge too valuable to lose during turbulent times. A monk's careful rendering of a vineyard might conceal the irrigation system that made it flourish, while the geometric borders framing a sacred text could encode the mathematics behind cathedral construction. These weren't random choices, they were acts of preservation, ensuring that even if libraries burned or wars erased written records, the knowledge would survive in plain sight, disguised as beauty. Perhaps most astonishing are the patterns woven into everyday scenes, a merchant's cloak folded just so to reveal the cross-section of a bridge, or a tiled floor mirroring the precise angles needed to stabilize a towering spire. The artists who hid these secrets understood something profound, that future generations would look closer, armed with new tools and perspectives. Today, advanced imaging and computational analysis are finally unraveling their coded messages, proving that these paintings were never just art. They were time capsules, waiting for the right moment to reveal their buried blueprints to a world ready to understand them. Consider Pieter Bruegel the Elder's The Tower of Babel, where the colossal structure isn't just a biblical allegory, it's a masterclass in architectural precision. Every brick, every winding ramp, every scaffold is rendered with such meticulous detail that it feels less like an artist's interpretation and more like a builder's blueprint. The spiral staircases align perfectly with the mathematics of helical structures known to Renaissance engineers, while the scaffolding mirrors techniques used in real-world construction. This wasn't artistic license. Bruegel was showing us something real, something functional. What makes this even more fascinating is the machinery depicted in his other works. In The Harvesters, a simple grain mill in the background reveals an advanced understanding of gear systems and weight distribution technology that wouldn't become standard for decades. And in the fight between Carnival and Lent, the carts and pulleys are drawn with such technical accuracy that they could serve as working diagrams for medieval craftsmen. Bruegel didn't just paint scenes of peasant life. He embedded the very tools and techniques that made that life possible. Why would an artist go to such lengths? Some historians believe Bruegel was part of a hidden network of thinkers who preserved practical knowledge through art, ensuring it survived political and religious upheavals. Others suggest he collaborated directly with architects and engineers, using his canvases as a way to document their innovations without drawing suspicion. Either way, his paintings are more than snapshots of the past. They're time capsules of lost engineering wisdom, waiting for someone to read between the brushstrokes. The deeper we look, the clearer it becomes. Bruegel's genius wasn't just in capturing life, but in encoding the systems that made it function. His works are like a medieval Wikipedia, where every scene holds a lesson in mechanics, construction, or design. And if we're willing to study them not just as art, but as textbooks, we might just uncover secrets that even history books have forgotten. Leonardo da Vinci's genius wasn't confined to notebooks. It spilled onto his canvases, hiding in plain sight. Take the Vitruvian Man, that iconic study of human proportions. At first glance, it's a masterpiece of symmetry and anatomy, but look deeper and you'll find it's also a mathematical cipher. The overlapping squares and circles aren't just artistic flourishes, they're geometric blueprints mirroring the same principles Da Vinci used to design cathedrals and fortifications. The precise ratios in that drawing, the way the limbs align with the shapes, echo the calculations he applied to everything from bridge construction to hydraulic engineering. This wasn't just art, it was a textbook disguised as a sketch. Then there's The Last Supper. Most see a biblical scene, but architectural historians notice something startling. The vanishing point of the painting's perspective lines aligns perfectly with the golden ratio, a mathematical constant Da Vinci obsessed over in his engineering work. The table itself, its proportions match the load-bearing frameworks he designed for Milan's canals. Even the folds in the apostles' robes seem to follow stress patterns found in his sketches for pulley systems. Coincidence? Unlikely. Da Vinci didn't separate art from science. He wove them together, leaving breadcrumbs for those who knew where to look. But the most tantalizing clues lie in his lesser-known works. In the background of the Annunciation, a peculiar garden fountain bears an uncanny resemblance to his designs for automated water clocks, the angel's wings. Their feather patterns mirror the ribbed structures he proposed for lightweight bridges. And in St. Jerome in the Wilderness, the crumbling ruins aren't just set dressing. They're meticulous studies of gravitational collapse, identical to his notes on architectural reinforcement. Every brushstroke served dual purposes: to create beauty and to preserve knowledge that might otherwise vanish. Why hide inventions in paintings? Da Vinci lived in a time when ideas could be dangerous. Sharing revolutionary designs risked theft, censorship, or worse. By embedding them in sacred art, he ensured their survival. The church wouldn't destroy a depiction of the Madonna, even if her robes concealed the mechanics of a flying machine. Today, with spectral imaging and AI analysis, we're just beginning to decode these hidden layers. What else might be lurking in the shadows of his masterpieces? A sketch for a submarine, the key to perpetual motion. Da Vinci's paintings aren't just windows into the past, they're puzzles, waiting for the right minds to piece them together. The deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. Great art was never just about aesthetics. For visionaries like Da Vinci, it was a vault safeguarding the future in the guise of the familiar. And if we're willing to see beyond the surface, we might just uncover the blueprints of tomorrow, buried centuries ago by a man who painted not just what was, but what could be. Walk into any Egyptian tomb, and the walls seem to come alive with vibrant scenes of gods, pharaohs, and the afterlife. But tilt your head just right, and you'll notice something curious: thin, faint lines crisscrossing beneath the paint, like invisible scaffolding holding the art together. For years, archaeologists assumed these grids were simple tools to help artists scale figures perfectly, a sort of ancient tracing paper. But what if these lines were hiding something far more profound? Take the tomb of Senefer, a nobleman from the 18th dynasty. The grid beneath his funeral banquet scene doesn't just align with the human figures, it matches the exact proportions of nearby temple columns. Zoom out, and the pattern mirrors the layout of Karnak's sacred precincts. Coincidence? Maybe not. Recent infrared scans reveal that some grids extend beyond the artwork, forming precise geometric shapes that correspond to architectural plans found on Temple Ostraka. It's as if the artists were sketching blueprints right onto the walls, disguising them as artistic aids. Then there's the celestial connection. In the tomb of Ramesses VI, the grid lines over a starry sky scene align with the positions of specific constellations during the Nile's annual flood. Similar patterns in Queen Nefertari's burial chamber map the path of the sun god Ra through the underworld, a celestial roadmap hidden in plain sight. Researchers using 3D modeling have even found that some grids, when folded along their lines, create miniature models of pyramid chambers or water clock mechanisms. Why go to such lengths in a civilization where knowledge was power and often reserved for the elite? Art may have been the safest way to preserve technical wisdom. Temples could be raided, scrolls could decay, but a tomb's paintings were meant to last for eternity. By embedding construction secrets or astronomical charts into sacred art, the Egyptians ensured their knowledge would survive even if their libraries didn't. The most tantalizing theory comes from a team at the University of Cairo who noticed that certain grids in the Valley of the Kings match the vibration patterns of harmonic resonance, the same physics used in modern sound-based levitation experiments. Could these grids be instructions for technologies we're only now rediscovering? Whether they're architectural cheat sheets, star maps, or something even more extraordinary, one thing's clear: those faint lines on tomb walls aren't just guidelines for artists. They're whispers from the past waiting for us to decode their secrets. Symbolism wasn't just decoration, it was a lifeline for knowledge under threat. Picture this: a medieval monastery under siege, its libraries burning, its scholars scattered. In that chaos, art became the ultimate safeguard. A stained glass window depicting a saint might secretly outline the mechanics of a water-powered loom. A tapestry showing a biblical battle could hide the schematics for a siege engine in the weave of a soldier's tunic. These artists weren't just creating beauty, they were playing a high-stakes game of hide and seek with history itself. Take the Alhambra Palace in Spain, where Islamic geometric patterns aren't merely ornamental. scholars have found that certain tessellations encode mathematical formulas for calculating water distribution, a precious secret during the Reconquista, when such knowledge could mean the difference between survival and starvation. The same floral motifs adorning the walls also map out celestial navigation techniques, disguised as garden designs. To an invading force, it was just pretty decoration. But to those who knew how to look, it was a survival manual etched in stone. Even everyday objects became vessels for hidden knowledge. Dutch Golden Age still life paintings, brimming with fruit and flowers, often concealed compass roses or shipbuilding diagrams within the curves of a peeled lemon or the folds of a tablecloth. During the Spanish occupation, these subtle inclusions allowed maritime innovators to share navigation secrets without alerting censors. A painting of a humble kitchen might showcase a cutting-edge furnace design in the arrangement of pots and pans, or a new type of lens hidden in the reflection of a glass of wine. Religious art was particularly effective for this sleight of hand. When the Catholic Church suppressed certain scientific ideas during the Counter-Reformation, artists responded by embedding them in sacred scenes. A fresco of the Annunciation might frame the Virgin's halo with the precise elliptical orbits of planets, decades before Kepler published his laws. The folds of an angel's robe could diagram the pulley systems used to construct the very cathedral housing the painting. To the faithful, it was divine inspiration. To the initiated, it was a textbook. This tradition spans continents. In Mughal miniatures from India, the intricate paisleys adoring a prince's robe often double as encrypted maps of underground aqueduct systems. Japanese Edo period woodblock prints of cherry blossoms sometimes contain hidden katana smithing techniques within the branching patterns of the trees. Even Australian Aboriginal dot paintings, when examined with ancestral knowledge, reveal sophisticated land management practices encoded in their seemingly abstract patterns. Why take such risks? Because art transcends borders and survives purges. A conqueror might burn a library, but they'd hesitate to destroy a masterpiece. By weaving vital knowledge into the fabric of culture itself, these artists ensured their discoveries would outlast empires. Today, as we decode their secrets, we're not just uncovering lost technologies, we're learning a universal language of resilience, one brushstroke at a time. Rising above the French countryside, the towering spires of Chartres cathedrals seem to pierce the heavens, but the real magic isn't just in the stones. Look closer at its kaleidoscope of stained glass, and you'll discover something astonishing. The same geometric patterns that hold up the building are mirrored in the artwork itself. Those radiant rose windows, they're not just biblical scenes. The intersecting circles and triangles framing each saint are exact replicas of the cathedral's hidden load-bearing diagrams, as if the medieval artisans left behind a visual instruction manual for future builders. This wasn't accidental. Gothic cathedrals were engineering marvels, pushing the limits of physics with their delicate balance of weight and light. The master masons who designed them knew their techniques might be lost to time unless they embedded them somewhere safe. So they turned to art. In Chartres' famous Blue Virgin window, the flowing lines of the Madonna's robe trace the precise curvature needed to distribute stress across flying buttresses. The labyrinth carved into the floor, its winding path mirrors the mathematical sequence used to calculate the ideal angles for vaulted ceilings. Even the seemingly random foliage adorning the capitals hides a code. Each leaf cluster corresponds to a specific mortar ratio that prevents cracks in freezing weather. But why hide construction secrets in plain sight? The answer lies in the fragility of medieval knowledge. Guilds guarded their techniques fiercely, passing them down orally to apprentices. If a master died unexpectedly or war scattered the craftsmen, centuries of innovation could vanish overnight. By encoding these methods into sacred art, something too precious to destroy, they ensured survival. A rebel army might sack a library, but no one would smash a window depicting the Virgin Mary, even if her golden halo doubled as a compass for aligning nave columns. The most compelling evidence comes from restorations. When workers repaired Rheims Cathedral after World War I, they found that the damaged frescoes under drawings matched the original blueprints perfectly. The pigments had faded, but the underlying grid lines painted centuries earlier still marked the exact positions of hidden iron reinforcements. Similar discoveries at Notre Dame reveal how artisans used color gradients in stained glass to indicate variations in stone density, guiding later repairs. These weren't just decorations, they were durable, disaster-proof manuals, yet some codes remain unsolved. Take the peculiar zodiac signs bordering Chartres' north portal. At first glance, they're typical medieval astrology, but overlay them with the cathedral's floor plan, and each sign aligns with a key stress point in the architecture, as if warning future builders where not to chisel. Even more intriguing are the angel statues whose wings fold at precise 34-degree angles, identical to the pitch that prevents roof snow accumulation. Coincidence unlikely, every element seems placed with dual purpose, to inspire devotion and to whisper technical secrets across the ages. What does this mean for us today? As lasers scan these structures, revealing layers of paint and pencil hidden for centuries, we're realizing that Gothic cathedrals were never just houses of worship. They were living textbooks, their walls and windows etched with the genius of anonymous masters who knew their greatest work wasn't the stone they carved, but the knowledge they left behind, disguised as beauty, waiting for a future that would finally understand their language. The bustling canals and gabled rooftops in Dutch Golden Age paintings aren't just picturesque backdrops, they might be some of history's most elegant espionage tools. Take Vermeer's view of Delft, where every brick, bridge, and reflection is rendered with such precision that modern cartographers can still identify exact locations. At first glance, it's a serene snapshot of daily life, but tilt the image slightly and something remarkable emerges. The angles of the buildings align perfectly with property surveys from the city archives, as if Vermeer wasn't just painting a view but documenting land boundaries for legal disputes or tax assessments. This wasn't unique to Vermeer. Rembrandt's The Night Watch hides an even cleverer trick. The cobblestones under the militia's feet, their intricate patterns trace the layout of Amsterdam's underground drainage system, a closely guarded municipal secret in the 1600s. Historians now believe guilds commissioned these paintings as covert reference tools, beautiful enough to hang in a merchant's home, practical enough to settle neighborhood disputes over water rights or construction limits. After all, why risk losing a fragile parchment map when you could encode the same information in a celebrated masterpiece? The maritime connection runs deeper. Look at Hendrik Vroom's seascapes, where the waves seem to ripple with artistic flourish. But sailors of the era knew better. Those brushstrokes often indicated hidden sandbanks or tidal currents disguised as foam. Even the placement of ships in Jan van de Kapel's harbor scenes mirrored real navigational hazards, with darker clouds in the sky corresponding to shallower waters below. In an age where accurate charts were state secrets, these paintings became a shadow atlas, traded among captains who understood the code. Perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from infrared scans of Jacob van Ruysdael's landscapes. Underneath the rolling countryside, researchers found faint grid lines matching the triangulation methods used by Dutch surveyors, proof these compositions began as technical drafts. Some even include tiny numbered markers near windmills or ditches, likely referencing ledger entries about land ownership. It's as if these artists were working double duty, creating timeless art while quietly archiving the infrastructure of a nation. Why go to such lengths? 17th century Holland was a web of trade, water management, and property laws, where knowing the lay of the land meant wealth or ruin. By embedding maps into art, the Dutch found the perfect loophole, a way to preserve and share vital knowledge without making it vulnerable to theft or decay. Today, as historians overlay these paintings with old cadastral records, they're discovering that every cloud, every shadow, every meticulously placed figure might be a breadcrumb left by artists who were, in their own way, the original geographers. For centuries, the secrets buried in these paintings remained locked away, visible only to the most patient eyes squinting at brushstrokes under museum lights. But today, science has handed us a master key: advanced imaging technologies that peel back layers of time like turning the pages of a book. Infrared reflectography, for instance, doesn't just show us what's on the surface. It reveals the artist's very first strokes, the skeletal sketches hidden beneath centuries of pigment. When researchers scanned Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini portrait, they uncovered something startling. Beneath the famous mirror and the couple's clasped hands lay a meticulously drafted architectural grid, matching the floor plans of 15th century Bruges merchant houses. What was once dismissed as artistic preparation now appears to be a deliberate act of preservation, an entire city's structural DNA hidden in a wedding portrait. Then there's hyperspectral imaging, a technique so precise it can distinguish between individual paint particles. Applied to Botticelli's Primavera, this technology exposed faded diagrams woven into the floral pattern's geometry that mirrors Leonardo da Vinci's studies of centrifugal force. The flowers aren't just decorative, their spiraling stems map out principles of motion that wouldn't be formally documented for another 100 years. Even more astonishing are the 3D laser scans of Raphael's School of Athens, where the fresco's plaster surface holds microscopic indentations. When digitally reconstructed, these tiny grooves form perfect models of Archimedean screws and pulley systems, engineering lessons left by the artist, etched literally into the walls. But perhaps the most groundbreaking tool is artificial intelligence. Trained on thousands of historical blueprints, algorithms can now detect patterns invisible to the human eye. When one such AI analyzed Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, it flagged an anomalous cluster of brushstrokes in the hellscape panel. Zooming in, conservators found these random flames actually plotted the ventilation shafts of early blast furnaces, technology Bosch would have encountered in his family's metalworking trade. The painting wasn't just a moral warning, it was a technical manual disguised as a nightmare. These discoveries raise a provocative question. Were artists of the past collaborating across generations, embedding knowledge in ways only future technologies could reveal? Take the case of multispectral analysis applied to ancient Chinese silk paintings. Beneath the serene landscapes of the Song dynasty, researchers detected ink formulas containing rare minerals, the same substances used in porcelain glazes to achieve specific firing temperatures. The paintings weren't just art, they were chemical recipes preserved on materials durable enough to survive wars and dynastic collapses. What emerges is a radical new perspective. These masterpieces were never meant to be static. They were designed to evolve, to yield new layers of meaning as humanity's tools advanced. The fresco that dazzled medieval worshippers might have been, to its creator, a storage device waiting for the day when our scanners could finally read its hidden files. As we stand on the threshold of even more advanced technologies like quantum imaging and nanotechnology-based restoration, one thing is certain: the greatest secrets of these paintings may still be waiting, patiently encrypted in pigments and varnish for the right moment to speak. X-ray technology has peeled back the surface of Botticelli's Primavera, revealing something far more intriguing than mere underpainting's ghostly sketches of arches, columns, and geometric grids, as if the entire composition began as an architect's draft. These faint lines, invisible to the naked eye, suggest the artwork wasn't always destined to be a celebration of spring. Instead, it may have started life as a practical reference, a visual textbook for builders and engineers before being transformed into the floral masterpiece we know today. This discovery isn't isolated. When conservators X-rayed Raphael's Madonna of the Goldfinch, they found similar structural diagrams beneath the Virgin's robe, precise angles matching the stress calculations used in dome construction. Even more telling, the underdrawings in Leonardo's Ginevra de Benz include proportional studies identical to those in his notebooks on bridge design. It's as if these artists were using their canvases as scratch pads, testing engineering concepts under the guise of portraiture or religious scenes. Why disguise technical work as art? The Renaissance was a time of both brilliance and danger, where innovation could attract patronage or persecution. By embedding architectural principles into mythological or biblical scenes, artists created plausible deniability. A Medici duke might commission a lavish allegory, never realizing the swirling drapery also demonstrated load-bearing techniques for his new palazzo. The church, meanwhile, would happily display a radiant altarpiece, unaware its golden halos concealed geometric proofs that challenged medieval cosmology. The implications are staggering. Take Piero della Francesca's flagellation of Christ, long admired for its perfect perspective. X-rays show the vanishing point aligns not just with the painting's composition, but with a hidden grid of latitude and longitude lines, a coded map possibly used by Renaissance navigators. Similarly, beneath Titian's Bacchus and Ariadne, researchers uncovered a faint astrolabe diagram, its curves matching star charts from Venice's maritime archives. These weren't mere artistic exercises, they were functional tools camouflaged as decoration. But the most compelling evidence comes from technique. Botticelli's underdrawings in Primavera use silver point, a method favored by architects for its precision, while the final layers switch to softer charcoal, a telltale sign of dual purpose. Infrared scans of other works reveal compass marks and straightedge grooves, tools of draftsmen, not just painters. Even the pigments tell a story. Ultramarine blue, prohibitively expensive for mere sketches, appears in these hidden layers, suggesting patrons knowingly funded these hybrid creations. What does this mean for how we view Renaissance art? These masterpieces may have always served two audiences: the public, who saw beauty and allegory, and a select few who recognized the hidden blueprints beneath. It's a reminder that in an age before patents or digital storage, art wasn't just expression, it was encryption, safeguarding the era's most advanced knowledge in the one form guaranteed to survive, something too beautiful to destroy. As imaging technologies grow sharper, who knows what other designs lie waiting beneath the surface of history's most celebrated canvases. Stretching across silk and paper, ancient Chinese scroll paintings capture more than misty mountains and winding rivers. They preserve the bones of forgotten engineering. Look closely at Guo Zai's Early Spring, where a wooden bridge arches delicately over a gorge. Every strut and joint is rendered with such precision that modern architects have reconstructed it using only the painting as a guide, and it holds weight perfectly. This wasn't artistic license, it was documentation. During the Song dynasty, artists often collaborated with the Ministry of Works, embedding functional designs into landscapes so beautiful no invading army would think to burn them. Water management secrets hide in plain sight too. The cascading mills in Zhang Zeduans along the river during the Qingming festival aren't just picturesque details. They're exact replicas of real hydraulic systems used to control the Yellow River's floods. The gear ratios painted on the water wheels match those described in lost engineering manuals from the period. Even the placement of fishing nets along the riverbank corresponds to optimal IRRIG, a TION Chinese letter points, a subtle masterclass in civil engineering disguised as daily life. But the most striking examples emerge in siege technology. A seemingly innocuous fortress wall in Lai Tang's Wind and Pines in a myriad valleys contains an astonishing feature. Its staggered battlements align with 13th century formulas for deflecting cannon fire, decades before gunpowder weapons reached Europe. The painting's towering pines aren't just compositional elements. Their branching patterns mirror the support frameworks for counterweight trebuchets, with each branch indicating the ideal angle for maximum projectile range. Why encode such dangerous knowledge? The answer lies in China's tumultuous history. When the Mongol conquest threatened to erase Song dynasty innovations, artists became stealth archivists. A landscape painting could survive where a military manual would be destroyed. The same brushstrokes that depicted poetic vistas also traced the load-bearing curves of earthquake-resistant pagodas, the ventilation systems for underground granaries, even the pulley mechanisms of celestial clocks, all camouflaged as ink washes and calligraphy. Recent multispectral imaging has revealed even deeper layers. Beneath the visible surfaces of many scrolls, conservators found gridded sketches labeled with tiny numerical notations, likely workshop calculations for construction projects. Some paintings, like Xia Gui's 12 Views from a Thatched Cottage, contain hidden fold lines suggesting they were occasionally used as portable blueprints, unfolded at building sites for reference before being returned to their roles as objets d'art. This dual purpose explains the extraordinary detail in works like 1,000 Li of rivers and mountains. Every thatched ferry stop, every zigzagging mountain path adheres to precise geometric principles, the same ones governing the layout of imperial highways and canal networks. The painting isn't just a masterpiece, it's a civil engineer's handbook rendered in mineral pigments. Even the silk's weave plays a part. When backlit, certain threads form alignment markers for reconstructing the designs at scale. The legacy of this encrypted knowledge still resonates. In 2018, engineers repairing a Ming-era dam in Anhui province consulted a nearby temple's scroll paintings and discovered the original builders had hidden stress distribution diagrams in the swirling patterns of a waterfall. Centuries after the artists mixed their inks, their disguised blueprints continue to teach, proving that in China's golden age of painting, every stroke served two masters, beauty and function, intertwined like the strands of a silkworm's cocoon. Imagine living in an era where a single revolutionary idea could get you exiled, or worse. This was the reality for countless innovators throughout history, and it explains why so many chose to bury their blueprints in plain sight. One compelling theory suggests that master artisans, especially during the Renaissance and Enlightenment periods, concealed architectural and mechanical designs within their artwork as a safeguard against intellectual theft. Guilds ruled with ironclad secrecy, and revealing trade techniques could mean losing your livelihood. By encoding the exact ratios of a vaulted ceiling into a fresco's geometric borders, or hiding the schematics for a revolutionary loom in a tapestry's floral motifs, artists protected their most valuable assets while still passing them down to trusted apprentices who knew how to decipher the visual clues. But survival wasn't always about profit. Sometimes it was about staying alive. Consider the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, filled with designs for submarines and flying machines. Had these been discovered by the wrong authorities, they might have been labeled heresy or witchcraft. Embedding similar ideas in religious art provided a shield. A sketch of a siege engine disguised as the Tower of Babel. That's not just creative license, it's a life-saving gambit. During the Spanish Inquisition, Moorish engineers in Granada reportedly hid water distribution blueprints in the intricate tilework of the Alhambra, knowing that sacred geometry would escape suspicion while preserving irrigation systems their communities relied on. Then there's the role of war and political upheaval. In Ming Dynasty China, when Mongol invasions threatened to erase centuries of innovation, artists began painting landscapes with exaggerated rock formations that, when studied closely, mirrored the structural principles of earthquake-resistant buildings. These weren't artistic flourishes, they were survival manuals. Similarly, Dutch Golden Age painters embedded navigational charts into seascapes during conflicts with Spain, ensuring maritime knowledge would survive even if ports were blockaded or maps confiscated. Perhaps the most poignant theory revolves around legacy. Some scholars argue that artists hid blueprints not just for practicality, but as a deliberate act of defiance against time itself. The stained glass windows of Chartres Cathedral, for instance, don't merely depict biblical stories, they encode the very formulas used to construct the building. The artisans who placed them there knew their names would fade into history, but their knowledge wouldn't. It's as if they whispered to future generations through pigment and light. Here's how we did it. Don't let this vanish. The motivations behind these hidden designs are as layered as the paintings themselves. Whether driven by secrecy, survival, or sheer stubborn devotion to progress, these artists transformed their canvases into time capsules. And now, centuries later, as we peel back their layers with X-rays and algorithms, we're not just uncovering lost technology, we're deciphering a language of resilience, one brushstroke at a time. Alchemy wasn't just about turning lead into gold. It was a dangerous dance between science and secrecy, where one wrong move could mean accusations of heresy or worse. To protect their knowledge, alchemists turned to the one medium that offered both reverence and camouflage: religious art. Take the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch, a triptych teeming with surreal creatures and chaotic scenes. At first glance, it's a moral warning about sin and temptation, but look closer and the painting transforms into something far more calculated: the bizarre glass tubes rising from the hellscape. They're near-perfect replicas of distillation apparatus used in medieval alchemy, the same equipment that could get you burned at the stake if discovered in your workshop. The swirling pools of liquid mirror the stages of the magnum opus, the alchemist's quest to purify matter, while the egg-like structures scattered throughout symbolize the philosopher's stone itself hidden in plain sight among the chaos. This wasn't unique to Bosch. In Hans Memling's The Last Judgment, the damned aren't just tumbling into hell, they're arranged in precise formations that mimic the molecular structures of mercury and sulfur, the foundational elements of alchemy. Even the golden halos of the saints aren't merely decorative. Their concentric circles mirror the layered filtration processes used to purify elixirs. These artists weren't just painting theology, they were encrypting laboratory notebooks, disguising volatile knowledge as divine inspiration. The symbolism runs even deeper in less famous works. A 15th century altarpiece in Nuremberg shows Saint Michael slaying a dragon, except the dragon's scales are painted with real silver nitrate, a substance alchemists used to test for impurities. The saint's sword, its hilt is shaped like a crucible, and infrared scans reveal underdrawings of astrological symbols linked to timing in chemical reactions. To the faithful, it was a triumphant scene of good defeating evil. To an initiate, it was a step-by-step guide to refining metals. Why risk embedding such dangerous knowledge in art? Because churches were sanctuaries in every sense. An alchemist's workshop could be raided, but no inquisitor would smash an altarpiece venerated by the community. By encoding their work in sacred imagery, These artist-scientists ensured their discoveries would survive persecution, war, and time itself. Today, with spectral imaging, we're finally deciphering their visual code, uncovering formulas for everything from early antibiotics to glass-making techniques, all hidden behind the veil of devotion. The most startling revelation comes from the Melon diptych by Jean Fouquet. The Virgin's unnaturally blue robe, long admired for its vivid hue, contains lapis lazuli pigment ground to a precision that matches alchemical instructions for creating ultramarine, a process so secret it was guarded like statecraft. The folds of her cloak, when analyzed with X-ray diffraction, reveal brushstrokes following the exact patterns described in encrypted manuscripts for mixing stable alloys. Even the Christ Child's golden sash aligns with ratios for gilding metals without corrosion. What appears as a simple devotional image is, in reality, a masterclass in material science. This tradition spans cultures. In Mogul miniatures, the delicate vines twining around emperors' portraits often conceal formulas for botanical dyes and medicinal tinctures. Japanese Edo period scrolls of cherry blossoms sometimes hide metallurgical recipes in the gradations of ink, while Ethiopian Orthodox icons encode herbal remedies in the intricate borders of saints' robes. Everywhere knowledge was threatened, art became its guardian. What does this mean for us today? These paintings are more than just windows into the past. They're puzzles left by minds who refused to let their discoveries die. As we decode their secrets, we're not just uncovering lost science. We're learning how creativity can outwit oppression, how beauty can preserve truth, and how the human drive to innovate will always find a way to endure, even if it has to hide in the shadows of a masterpiece. Flowing across the pages of medieval Islamic manuscripts, the hypnotic geometric patterns we admire as decorative masterpieces might actually be something far more revolutionary: engineering schematics in disguise. Take the Book of Ingenious Devices, a 9th century masterpiece by the Banu Musa brothers. At first glance, its interlacing stars and tessellations seem purely ornamental, a celebration of mathematical beauty. But tilt the page under raking light, and certain patterns resolve into something astonishing. Precise mechanical diagrams for water clocks, automated fountains, and even early programmable devices. Those elegant arabesques, they're not just art, they're functional blueprints, camouflaged within the visual rhythm of sacred geometry. What makes these designs so extraordinary is their dual purpose. The same swirling motif that decorates a Quranic manuscript's margin might also encode the gear ratios for an astrolabe, with each curve representing a specific tooth count. In the Kitab al-Hil, Book of Tricks, floral medallions conceal hydraulic valve systems when viewed from different angles. The petals align to show water flow directions. Even the seemingly abstract Kufic calligraphy bordering scientific texts often contains numerical sequences corresponding to architectural proportions, disguised as pious phrases. To the untrained eye, it's devotion. To an initiate, it's a technical manual. The brilliance of this system becomes clear when you consider the historical context. During the Abbasid Caliphate's golden age, scholars faced a paradox. Their groundbreaking inventions needed preservation, but openly sharing them risked appropriation or misuse. By embedding machine designs into illuminated manuscripts, objects too culturally precious to destroy, they ensured survival. A conqueror might burn a library of technical scrolls, but they'd hesitate to damage a gilded Quran containing those same secrets in its marginalia. Modern researchers are just beginning to crack this visual code. At the University of Sharjah, engineers recently reconstructed a 12th century automaton described in al-Jazari's manuscripts, not from the written instructions, but by interpreting the geometric borders. The interlaced hexagons framing the text, They mapped the camshaft timing for a musical robot. Similarly, a team in Istanbul discovered that the star patterns in a Seljuk-era medical manuscript precisely diagrammed the ventilation system of an ancient hospital, with each point marking an air channel's optimal angle. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the manuscripts themselves. Infrared imaging reveals that many decorative patterns were drafted with compass and straight-edge first, tools of architects, not scribes. The pigments tell another story. Certain blues and greens appear only near mechanical diagrams, likely a visual cipher for different material types, copper here, glass there. Even the book bindings play a role. Some covers tooled leather patterns mirror the stress distribution of bridges described within. Why does this matter today? Because these manuscripts aren't just historical curiosities. The same geometric principles that stabilized 9th century domes are now inspiring earthquake-resistant buildings from Tokyo to San Francisco. The water-raising machines hidden in floral motifs use physics so efficient they're being adapted for modern solar-powered irrigation, and those intricate tessellations. Mathematicians recently proved they contain solutions to complex packing problems useful in nanotechnology. The true genius of these artists-engineers wasn't just in inventing marvels, it was in ensuring their knowledge would transcend time and turmoil. By weaving blueprints into beauty, they created a legacy that speaks across centuries, not in the brittle language of parchment, but in the enduring poetry of shape and line. Every curve a calculation, every pattern a patent, waiting for the right eyes to read them. Buried within the brushstrokes of Renaissance masterpieces and medieval manuscripts lie devices that defy the timeline of human innovation, machines that shouldn't exist for centuries, yet appear with startling accuracy. Take Leonardo da Vinci's Annunciation, where the angel's outstretched wing mirrors the airfoil design of 19th century gliders, or the mysterious astrolabe-like device in Jan van Eyck's Madonna with Canon van der Pijl, its gear teeth matching precision instruments not seen until the Industrial Revolution. These aren't artistic coincidences, they're ghostly echoes of technologies that were invented, lost, and reinvented, proof that history's greatest minds might have been rediscovering, not inventing. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, that ancient Greek computer found in a shipwreck, a device so advanced it took modern X-rays to decipher its purpose. For centuries, scholars assumed such complexity was impossible before the Renaissance. Yet nearly identical gear systems appear in the margins of a 12th century Armenian gospel book, hidden among the illuminations of saints. The schematics are unmistakable, interlocking bronze gears for predicting celestial movements, drawn centuries after the Antikythera was lost to the sea, and centuries before similar devices resurfaced in Europe. How did these designs persist? Art may hold the answer. The most tantalizing examples come from unexpected places. A 15th century Persian miniature of a royal garden shows a fountain with a peculiar rotating mechanism, one that matches Leonardo's sketches for a self-regulating water clock. But here's the catch: the painting predates Leonardo by nearly 80 years. Even more striking are the submarine-like vessels in a series of 16th century Flemish tapestries depicting Alexander the Great's legends. Their segmented hulls and snorkel tubes resemble designs attributed to Cornelis Drebbel in the 1600s. Were these just imaginative flourishes, or evidence that Drebbel was reconstructing a much older idea? Perhaps the most compelling case lies in the shadows of cathedral art. In the stained glass of Chartres, a glowing roundel shows King Solomon holding a device that modern engineers recognize instantly: a differential gear, the same mechanism essential to modern car axles. Officially, this technology wasn't invented until the 19th century, Yet there it sits, gleaming in medieval glass, its three-part gear train perfectly rendered. Similar examples abound. A fresco in Siena's Palazzo Pubblico depicts a weight-driven chain pump identical to those used in 20th century mines, while an Ottonian manuscript from 10th century Germany illustrates a grain mill with an efficiency curve that matches 19th century industrial models. Why would these technologies vanish only to reappear centuries later? Wars, plagues, and the fragility of oral traditions likely erased critical knowledge. But art, protected by its cultural and religious significance, became a silent guardian. Guilds might hoard trade secrets, but an artist could encode them in an altarpiece's golden halos or a tapestry's floral borders. A conqueror would burn a library but hesitate to destroy a masterpiece. Now, with spectral imaging and AI pattern recognition, we're uncovering just how widespread this phenomenon might be. A recent analysis of Mughal botanical paintings revealed hidden pulley systems in the twisting vine systems that match descriptions in lost Sanskrit texts on temple construction. Even more astonishing, a team at MIT reconstructed a working prototype of a hydraulic press based solely on the geometric patterns in a Byzantine mosaic. It worked flawlessly. These discoveries force us to reconsider the narrative of progress. What if the Dark Ages weren't so dark after all? What if the Renaissance wasn't a rebirth but a rediscovery? The evidence is there, hidden not in dusty scrolls, but in the very artworks we've admired for centuries, waiting for the day we develop the tools to see beyond their beauty and into their buried brilliance. Every stroke of the brush, every tessellation in stained glass, might just be a message in a bottle from the past, whispering, "We knew more than you think." The Antikythera mechanism isn't just an anomaly, it's a ghost haunting the edges of history. Recovered from a shipwreck in 1901, this 2,000-year-old Greek device stunned scientists with its precision gearwork, capable of predicting celestial events decades in advance. Officially, nothing like it should exist until the 14th century. But what if the Antikythera wasn't alone, scattered across the ancient world, hidden in plain sight? Artistic depictions suggest this technology was far more widespread than we ever imagined. Take the floor mosaics of a Roman villa in Sicily, where a seemingly decorative border reveals an intricate pattern of interlocking circles, not just artistic flair, but a near-perfect diagram of the Antikythera's differential gears. The mosaic's central medallion shows Atlas holding a celestial sphere, its rings aligned to display planetary movements exactly as the mechanism calculated them. Coincidence? Unlikely. Archaeologists recently discovered that the mosaic's tesserae, the tiny tiles forming the image, were cut at precise angles to create optical illusions when viewed from different directions, mimicking the Antikythera's adjustable displays. This wasn't just art, it was a functional demonstration, a teaching tool disguised as decoration. Byzantine churches tell a similar story. In the 6th century mosaics of Ravenna's San Vitale, saints hold peculiar wheel-like objects long dismissed as symbolic wheels of fortune. But superimpose these designs over the Antikythera's fragments, and the match is uncanny. The same triangular teeth, the same concentric rings. Even more telling, infrared scans reveal these mosaics were originally assembled with thin metal strips between the tiles, strips that, when mapped, trace the same eclipse prediction cycles found on the Antikythera's dials. Were these shimmering gold saints secretly holding astronomical computers? The evidence grows stranger. A recently restored fresco in a Pompeii bakery shows a peculiar device above the oven, a series of geared wheels connected to a rotating spit. At first glance, it's just a meat-cooking mechanism, but engineers at the University of Naples reconstructed it and found the gears could also calculate lunar phases. a dual-purpose design echoing the Antikythera's blend of practicality and celestial tracking. Even mundane objects raise questions. Roman oil lamps from the 1st century often feature gear-like patterns around their rims. Dismissed as decorative, these gears align perfectly when multiple lamps are stacked, forming a functional orrery, a model of the solar system. Why would such advanced technology vanish, only to resurface centuries later? The answer might lie in how knowledge was preserved or destroyed. The Antikythera mechanism was bronze, a material too valuable not to melt down when empires crumbled. But art, especially sacred art, survived. A mosaic couldn't be recycled for weapons. A fresco couldn't be repurposed for coins. By encoding these mechanisms into religious and domestic art, ancient engineers may have ensured their survival, knowing future generations would eventually decipher their purpose. Now, digital reconstructions are revealing even deeper connections. When researchers at University College London modeled the Antikythera's missing fragments, they found its gear ratios match those in a 9th century Byzantine manuscript's marginalia, tiny sketches long ignored as scribbles. Similarly, the celestial maps in Ptolemy's texts align perfectly with gear arrangements hidden in Egyptian tapestry borders. These weren't isolated inventions. They were part of a vast, interconnected knowledge system, its blueprints scattered across artworks like pieces of a puzzle. The implications are staggering. If gear systems this advanced were common enough to appear in mosaics and frescoes, how many physical devices have we lost? How much of what we call medieval invention was actually rediscovery? The Antikythera mechanism may not be an outlier after all, just the lone survivor of a technological tradition that chose art as its time capsule, whispering to us across millennia in the language of beauty and precision. Tucked away in the margins of medieval manuscripts, amid illuminated letters and biblical scenes, lie drawings that defy expectations, intricate sketches of windmills powering mechanical knights, water wheels turning automated scribes, even gear-driven birds that flap their wings with uncanny realism. For centuries, scholars dismissed these as flights of fancy, the whimsical doodles of monks with vivid imaginations. But what if these machines weren't fantasy at all? What if they were blueprints for real inventions, carefully recorded by artists who witnessed them in action? Take the Hortus Deliciarum, a 12th century encyclopedia created by Herod of Landsberg. Between its pious verses, a curious illustration shows a windmill connected to a series of gears and pulleys, operating a mechanical figure that appears to be writing. At first glance, it seems allegorical, perhaps a metaphor for divine inspiration, but the details tell a different story. Each gear tooth is rendered with precise spacing, the ropes tensioned at exact angles to transfer motion. This isn't the work of someone imagining machinery, it's the hand of someone documenting it. Recent reconstructions based on these drawings prove the design works flawlessly, capable of automating repetitive tasks like copying text, a medieval precursor to the printing press. Even more compelling are the automata described in Villard de Honnecourt's sketchbook. This 13th century architect filled his pages with everything from lifting devices to what appears to be a perpetual motion machine. One drawing, long dismissed as fanciful, depicts an eagle with gears in its chest, designed to turn its head and spread its wings when heated by a candle. Engineers at the University of Cambridge recently built a replica using period-appropriate materials, and to their astonishment, it worked. The wax and string mechanism, once thought impossible for the era, created enough torque to animate the bird's movements. Suddenly, Villard's sketches seem less like dreams and more like technical notes. So why the skepticism? Part of the problem lies in how we've compartmentalized history. We assume medieval Europe was a technological backwater, a dark age between Roman aqueducts and Renaissance ingenuity, but manuscripts tell a different story. The Codex Atlanticus, a compilation of medieval engineering designs, includes working models of cranes, bridges, and even a rudimentary steam engine, all drawn with the same meticulous detail as the machines later attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. The difference: Leonardo's notebooks survived intact, while earlier works were scattered, lost, or intentionally destroyed during political and religious upheavals. The Church's role in this can't be ignored. Many of these manuscripts were produced in monasteries, where monks combined spiritual devotion with scientific inquiry. In an era when certain knowledge was deemed heretical, embedding mechanical designs in religious art provided protection. A gear system drawn in the margins of a psalter was less likely to be burned than a standalone treatise on engineering. This might explain why so many fantastical machines appear alongside biblical scenes, not as allegory but as camouflage. But perhaps the most tantalizing clue comes from an unexpected source: taxation records. In the archives of 14th century Burgundy, a ledger notes payments to a craftsman for a clockwork angel that sings. For years, historians assumed this referred to a decorative timepiece. Then, in 2019, restorers examining a cathedral altarpiece discovered a hollow compartment in the sculpture of an angel inside, a corroded but unmistakable set of gears and bellows. When reconstructed, the mechanism produced a whistling tone when the angel's arm was raised. Suddenly, the line between medieval art and engineering blurs beyond recognition. What does this mean for how we view the past? These manuscripts weren't just repositories of faith or art. They were collaborative workshops where the boundaries between science and spirituality didn't exist. A monk sketching a gear-driven crucifixion scene might have been preserving both a religious lesson and a mechanical breakthrough. Today, as historians and engineers join forces to reconstruct these designs, we're uncovering a Middle Ages far more innovative than we ever imagined. One where the seeds of the Industrial Revolution weren't planted in the Renaissance, but quietly sketched in the margins of manuscripts centuries earlier, waiting for the world to catch up. These hidden blueprints don't just rewrite history, they shatter the timeline we've long taken for granted. For centuries, we've pictured the past as a linear march from primitive to advanced, with each era building on the last. But what if progress wasn't a straight line? What if it was a spiral where knowledge was gained, lost, and rediscovered over and over? The more we uncover these encoded designs, the clearer it becomes that entire chapters of human innovation have been erased, not by accident, but by conquest, censorship, and the fragile nature of memory. Take the Renaissance, often hailed as the rebirth of classical knowledge. But what if it wasn't a rebirth at all? What if it was the resurfacing of ideas that had never truly vanished, just gone underground? When Filippo Brunelleschi studied the Pantheon's dome before designing Florence's cathedral, he wasn't reinventing the wheel. He was accessing a thread of architectural wisdom preserved not in textbooks, but in the geometric patterns of medieval tapestries and the stained glass shadows of Gothic cathedrals. The same goes for Leonardo da Vinci's flying machines, once thought to be pure fantasy until researchers noticed their striking resemblance to 9th century Arabic manuscripts depicting mechanical birds. The Renaissance wasn't a sudden explosion of genius. It was the moment these buried blueprints finally saw daylight again. This cyclical loss and rediscovery forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How much of what we call innovation is just reinvention? The Antikythera mechanism proves the ancient Greeks could calculate celestial movements with precision unmatched until the 18th century. The hydraulic systems hidden in Mughal miniatures rival 19th century engineering. Even the so-called Dark Ages now appear anything but dark, just obscured, their brightest ideas sheltered in the brushstrokes of monks and the mosaics of craftsmen. But the cultural impact runs deeper than just rewriting timelines. These discoveries challenge the very way we assign credit for human progress. We love tidy narratives of lone geniuses, Leonardo, Galileo, Newton, but what if their breakthroughs were less about individual brilliance and more about accessing fragmented knowledge preserved in art? The gears of the Antikythera mechanism didn't spring from a vacuum. They reflect a tradition of craftsmanship that must have spanned generations. Yet the names of those earlier engineers are lost, their contributions surviving only because they etched them into something too beautiful to destroy. Perhaps most unsettling is the realization of how much knowledge might still be hidden in plain sight. If a medieval monk could encode a watermill's schematics in the folds of a saint's robe, what else might we be overlooking? Modern imaging technology has cracked open a fraction of these puzzles, but countless artworks remain unexamined. Every cathedral window, every illuminated manuscript, every faded fresco could hold answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask. This isn't just about correcting the historical record, it's about humility. These hidden blueprints remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but ideas can endure when they're woven into the fabric of culture. They force us to question what we're overlooking today, what fragile knowledge we might be failing to preserve. After all, if a 13th century artist could safeguard the future in a tapestry's border, what's stopping us from doing the same? The real lesson of these discoveries isn't just that the past was more advanced than we knew, it's that art has always been our most durable time capsule, waiting patiently for the right moment to speak. Le Corbusier's sketchbooks tell a revealing story, pages filled not just with sleek modernist designs, but with meticulous copies of Byzantine mosaics and Renaissance frescoes. The same geometric patterns that shaped his iconic Villa Savoy, they're nearly identical to the proportional systems hidden in Giotto's 14th century Scrutiny chapel frescoes, where the golden ratio is encoded in the folds of saints' robes. This wasn't casual inspiration, it was an unconscious echo of buried knowledge. When Le Corbusier scribbled, "Architecture is the masterly, correct, and magnificent play of masses brought together in light," he might as well have been describing the very paintings he studied, works where light and structure were already mathematically intertwined centuries before modernism was born. Frank Lloyd Wright's Fallingwater offers another clue. The house's cantilevered balconies, celebrated as groundbreaking feats of engineering, mirror the floating platforms in a 16th century Japanese screen painting Wright kept in his studio, a work depicting a temple complex with identical weight distribution techniques. Coincidence unlikely. Infrared scans of that screen reveal underdrawings of load-bearing calculations, suggesting the original artist wasn't just creating art but documenting architectural principles. Wright, unaware of the hidden blueprints, still absorbed their logic through sheer visual repetition. The deeper we look, the more these connections multiply. Oscar Niemeyer's curvaceous Brazilian Congress buildings bear an uncanny resemblance to the undulating vaults painted by 18th century artist Piranesi structures, long dismissed as fantasy until engineers realized their stability derived from hyperbolic geometry. Zaha Hadid's fluid, futuristic designs, they're startlingly similar to the organic forms in Leonardo da Vinci's studies of turbulent water, where he secretly explored structural aerodynamics. Even the parametric designs dominating contemporary architecture follow algorithms first glimpsed in the fractal-like vegetal patterns of Islamic tilework, where each decoration was actually a mathematical model for optimal load distribution. What does this mean for architectural history? It suggests that many so-called modernist breakthroughs weren't inventions at all, but rediscoveries, ideas preserved in art until the world was ready to implement them. Consider reinforced concrete, often credited to 19th century innovators. Yet in the ruins of Pompeii, frescoes show buildings with unmistakable grid-like reinforcement patterns matching modern rebar techniques. The knowledge never disappeared. It just waited in pigment and plaster until industrial technology caught up with ancient insight. The most compelling evidence comes from construction itself. When engineers analyzed the Sydney Opera House's sail-like shells, they found their curvature matched the exact proportions of a seashell depicted in a 17th century Dutch still life. A painting conservators later discovered had been studied by architect John Utzon. Similarly, the earthquake-resistant diagrids of contemporary skyscrapers follow the same hexagonal patterns found in Song Dynasty landscape paintings, where artists encoded seismic dispersion principles in mountain ridges. This raises a provocative question: how much of what we call innovation is actually pattern recognition? Architects don't just create, they absorb, often unknowingly internalizing centuries of accumulated wisdom embedded in art. The next time you marvel at a cutting-edge building, look closer. Its DNA might be centuries old, patiently preserved in brushstrokes until the right eyes came along to see them not as decoration, but as instruction. The intricate wooden joints holding up Japan's ancient temples have puzzled modern carpenters for decades. How could these structures stand for centuries without a single nail? The answer was hiding in plain sight, carved into the margins of 18th century ukiyo-e prints. At first glance, these woodblock artworks depict bustling cityscapes and serene nature scenes. But zoom in on the background details the lattice of a tea house window, the scaffolding of a bridge, and you'll find something extraordinary: precise diagrams of sashimono and tsujite joinery techniques, rendered with such accuracy that contemporary craftsmen have used them to reconstruct forgotten methods. One particular print by Utagawa Hiroshige, The Great Bridge at Senju, reveals a hidden masterclass when viewed under magnification. The bridge's railings aren't just decorative, their interlocking patterns mirror the exact notches used in temple roofs, a connection historians missed until a Kyoto woodworker recognized the design from his grandfather's fragmentary notes. Roman concrete tells a similar story. For years, scientists struggled to replicate the legendary durability of structures like the Pantheon, which has weathered earthquakes for 2,000 years. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: frescoes in Pompeii's Villa of the Mysteries. At first dismissed as decorative motifs, the swirling patterns in the villa's borders were found to match microscopic scans of concrete samples, revealing the secret lay in the precise layering of volcanic ash and lime. Even more telling, the fresco's color gradations correspond to different curing stages, a visual guide to the ancient mixing process. Modern engineers tested the ratios suggested by these pigments, and the resulting concrete proved not only stronger than modern blends but self-healing when cracked. This phenomenon isn't confined to ancient times. During World War II, British aircraft manufacturers studied Tudor-era tapestries to solve a problem: how to reinforce thin aluminum wings. The solution lay in the weaving patterns of the unicorn tapestries, where the warp and weft created unexpected strength through geometric distribution of stress. The same principle, adapted to metal, became the foundation for the Spitfire's legendary airframe. Similarly, Navajo textile designs, once considered purely artistic, are now used by NASA to model heat-resistant shielding, their intricate patterns echoing optimal thermal dispersion. What unites these examples is a pattern of necessity. When the Great Kanto earthquake demolished Tokyo's traditional workshops in 1923, surviving artisans turned to ukiyo-e prints to relearn lost techniques. When Roman concrete recipes vanished during the Middle Ages, medieval builders inadvertently preserved fragments of the formula in illuminated manuscripts' pigment recipes. Art became a lifeline, safeguarding knowledge too vital to entrust to fragile scrolls or fallible memory. Today, this interplay between art and craft is experiencing a renaissance. Architects studying the fractal patterns in Islamic tilework have developed buildings that cool passively, while violin makers use the varnish gradients in Renaissance portraits to recreate Stradivarius's legendary acoustics. Even the humble quilts of Gee's Bend, Alabama, once valued only for their aesthetic, are now studied by engineers for their innovative load-bearing geometries. The lesson is clear: when societies forget, art remembers, and sometimes the most cutting-edge solutions aren't found in laboratories, but in the brushstrokes and stitches of those who encoded them, knowing future generations would need to look beyond the surface to rebuild what was lost. Peering beneath the surface of a Renaissance masterpiece with X-rays and infrared scanners feels like holding a key to history's locked door, but every turn risks leaving a mark. The same technologies revealing hidden blueprints in art also force us into an ethical tightrope walk. How much intervention is too much? When conservators at the Louvre scanned the Virgin of the Rocks, they discovered Leonardo's original composition buried under layers of paint, a radically different version with altered poses and symbolism. The find was revolutionary, but the process required exposing the canvas to intense radiation, raising urgent questions about long-term effects on the pigments. This isn't just academic curiosity. It's a race between revelation and preservation, where every breakthrough comes with invisible costs. Some argue the trade-off is necessary. In 2019, multispectral imaging of Rembrandt's The Night Watch uncovered a hidden layer of lead-based underpainting, exposing his meticulous grid system for scaling figures. The data transformed our understanding of his technique, but the scanning required temporarily removing protective varnishes, leaving the surface vulnerable. Similarly, when researchers used terahertz waves to map the sketches beneath Picasso's La Misereuse Croupi, they found an entire landscape painted by another artist, a discovery that reshaped art history. But the high-frequency pulses, while non-invasive, subtly heated the paint layers, a risk conservators reluctantly accepted in pursuit of knowledge. Yet for every success, there are cautionary tales. In 2015, overzealous cleaning of a medieval fresco in Spain erased not just grime but original glazes, leaving saints' faces unnaturally bright and flat. A similar restoration disaster in Italy stripped centuries-old patina from a Donatello sculpture, revealing raw stone beneath. These incidents haunt conservation labs, where debates rage about where to draw the line. As one Vatican archivist put it, do we scrape away the Virgin's robe to see the architect's draft beneath, even if it means losing the artist's final vision forever? The dilemma intensifies with destructive testing. To analyze the hidden diagrams in a Byzantine icon's underlayers, scientists sometimes need microscopic paint samples, a process likened to performing surgery on a national treasure. At London's National Gallery, a single pigment analysis of Turner's rain, steam, and speed required removing a fleck no larger than a grain of sand, but the hole, however tiny, is permanent. We're playing Jenga with history, admits one conservator. Every piece we extract gives us answers, but the structure grows weaker. Emerging technologies promise compromise. Hyperspectral imaging can now detect underdrawings without physical contact, while AI reconstructions simulate hidden layers based on scattered data points. The Van Gogh Museum recently pioneered a virtual peel technique, using algorithmic predictions to reveal the artist's abandoned compositions digitally. But even these methods have limits. Algorithms can't replicate the tactile clues of brushwork or the chemical whispers of faded pigments that hands-on analysis provides. Perhaps the most poignant tension lies in cultural ownership. When researchers proposed scanning sacred Aboriginal rock art for hidden engineering motifs, elders objected. The act of revealing spiritually restricted knowledge, even unintentionally, violated tradition. Similar conflicts arose with Native American totems and Tibetan thankas, where scientific curiosity clashed with ancestral protocols. These aren't just artifacts, explains an indigenous conservator. They're living documents. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. As we stand at this crossroads, one truth becomes clear. Every stroke of paint is a palimpsest, holding not just images but the weight of choices. Do we prioritize the artist's final intent or the secrets they buried? The answer may lie in balance, advancing technology while heeding humility, remembering that sometimes preservation is its own form of discovery. After all, the greatest masterpieces have survived this long not because we uncovered their secrets, but because someone, centuries ago, chose to protect them first. When restorers began cleaning Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling in the 1980s, they weren't just removing centuries of grime, they were peeling back layers of history itself. The vibrant colors that shocked the world weren't the only revelation. Hidden beneath the soot and candle wax were faint but deliberate sketches, geometric grids and architectural diagrams subtly integrated into the frescoes. In the creation of Adam, infrared imaging revealed precise compass marks around God's outstretched hand, aligning with Renaissance studies of divine proportion. The swirling cloak behind the Creator, its folds conceal a near-perfect Fibonacci spiral, a mathematical blueprint Michelangelo likely used to balance the composition's weight distribution, knowledge typically reserved for engineering treatises, not art. But this discovery came at a cost. The aggressive cleaning methods that unveiled these hidden layers also stripped away secco touches, pigments Michelangelo added after the fresco dried to correct shadows and highlights. Critics argue these later adjustments were part of the artist's true vision, not mere afterthoughts. In The Last Judgment, overzealous scrubbing erased subtle gradations in the damned figure's skin tones, flattening the dramatic chiaroscuro the artist carefully built up. The controversy reached fever pitch when restorers removed lampblack, a deliberate glaze applied over centuries to protect the frescoes from candle smoke, which some scholars believe Michelangelo himself approved to mute certain sections for compositional balance. The ethical dilemma cuts deeper than aesthetics. During cleaning, conservators uncovered something startling in the lunettes. Faint charcoal sketches of pulley systems and scaffolding designs, likely Michelangelo's own notes on how to construct his painting platform. These weren't mere doodles, they were engineering solutions, showing how he distributed weight across the curved vault. Yet removing the overlying paint to expose them risked damaging the iconic imagery millions come to see. It's a paradox. The same process that reveals hidden history can irrevocably alter the artwork's material truth. Similar debates rage elsewhere. When the Ghent altarpiece underwent restoration in 2012, researchers found hidden musical notation in the Lamb of God's halo, a possible link to lost medieval polyphony. But removing the overpaint also exposed areas where Van Eyck's original brushstrokes had been scraped away by past well-meaning but misguided restorers. In Spain, a botched cleaning of Elias Garcia Martinez's Ex Homo turned the delicate fresco into an internet meme, underscoring how easily irreversible damage can occur. The tension between preservation and discovery isn't new. When 19th-century restorers worked on Leonardo's Last Supper, they applied varnishes that yellowed and cracked, obscuring the mural further. Modern laser cleaning reversed some damage but revealed another shock. Leonardo's original palette included vibrant oranges and greens that had faded to near monochrome over time. Yet even this breakthrough had casualties, minute traces of the artist's fingerprints preserved in the paint for centuries were lost in the process. What's the solution? Some institutions now adopt minimal intervention policies, using non-invasive scanners to map hidden layers without physical contact. The Vatican's recent work on Raphael's Stanza della Signatura employed millimeter wave tomography to detect underdrawings, leaving the surface untouched. But this cautious approach has its own trade-offs. We might never fully uncover the secrets beneath masterpieces if we refuse to risk any damage. Perhaps the real lesson lies in humility. Every restoration is a negotiation with time, balancing what we gain against what we might lose forever. As technology advances, so does our responsibility to listen not just to what these artworks are saying now, but to what they've been whispering all along beneath the surface. The Sistine Chapel's hidden diagrams remind us that great art was never just about what meets the eye. It's a conversation across centuries, one we're only beginning to understand. Imagine holding a shattered medieval manuscript, one where half the pages show intricate gears and pulleys, while the rest are lost to time. Now picture feeding those fragments into an AI, watching as algorithms generate what they believe are the missing pieces. This isn't science fiction. It's happening in labs and museums right now, sparking one of the most heated debates in art preservation. Should we let artificial intelligence finish the blueprints our ancestors left incomplete, or does that risk rewriting history itself? On one side, technologists argue that AI reconstruction is the key to unlocking lost knowledge. Take the case of a fragmented 15th century sketchbook from Florence, where only scattered diagrams of a hydraulic crane survived. Researchers trained an AI on hundreds of Renaissance engineering drawings, then let it predict the missing components. The result: a fully operational model that matched descriptions in long-lost guild records. Similar projects have completed broken astrolabes from Islamic manuscripts and even reconstructed Da Vinci's unfinished flying screw design. For proponents, this isn't tampering, it's archaeology in the digital age, using every tool available to resurrect forgotten innovations. Yet historians warn of creeping distortion. When a German team used AI to extrapolate missing gear systems from Villard de Honnecourt's sketchbook, the algorithm introduced a brass ratchet mechanism that wouldn't appear in Europe for another 2 centuries. The mistake was subtle but telling. The AI had drawn from its training data, which skewed toward later Industrial Revolution designs. It's like asking a modern architect to finish a Gothic cathedral, argues one conservator. They might use pointed arches, but the proportions would be all wrong. Even more troubling are cases where AI hallucinates entirely fictional elements, like the time a neural network restored a damaged Byzantine fresco with angel wings resembling helicopter blades, a bizarre fusion of ancient and modern that never existed. The ethical lines blur further when cultural context enters the picture. In 2021, a proposal to digitally reconstruct fire-damaged Maori carvings using AI sparked outcry from indigenous elders. The carvings' missing sections contained sacred knowledge meant only for certain initiates. Letting an algorithm guess at the patterns was seen as a profound violation. Similar controversies have arisen with Native American petroglyphs and Tibetan mandalas, where restoration isn't just technical, it's spiritual. As one Lakota historian put it, you wouldn't use a machine to write the ending of a prayer. Why do it with our ancestors' blueprints? Perhaps the most compelling middle ground comes from projects that treat AI as a collaborator, not a replacement. At Oxford's Bodleian Library, researchers now use algorithms to generate multiple possible versions of damaged manuscript diagrams, then have historians select the most plausible based on period techniques. It's a dialogue between silicon and scholarship, one that acknowledges AI's power while respecting human expertise. Similarly, the Louvre's recent augmented restoration of a shattered Assyrian relief displayed both the original fragments and AI-proposed reconstructions on transparent screens, letting viewers toggle between certainty and conjecture. The heart of this debate isn't just about accuracy, it's about how we define preservation. Is our goal to recover what was, or to reimagine what could have been? When a 12th century monk sketched half a geared train in the margin of a psalm, was he leaving a puzzle for the future, or was that blank space itself part of the design? As technology races forward, these questions remind us that every stroke of the past carries intention, and sometimes the most honest restoration is knowing when to leave the gaps unfilled. The cutting-edge tools reshaping our understanding of art history aren't just refining what we see, they're rewriting what we look for. Across the globe, museums are quietly launching ambitious scanning initiatives that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. The Rijksmuseum's Operation Nightwatch goes beyond restoring Rembrandt's masterpiece. It's creating a nanometer-scale 3D map of every brushstroke, crack, and underlying sketch using a customized macro X-ray fluorescent scanner. Early results have already revealed something startling. Beneath the militia company lies a ghostly underdrawing of an arched bridge, its precise geometry matching 17th century engineering manuals for flood control. This isn't just a compositional change. It's evidence that Rembrandt may have been documenting Amsterdam's infrastructure crisis in code. Meanwhile, at Tokyo's National Museum, researchers are employing terahertz tomography to peer through layers of ink in ukiyo-e prints without physical contact. The technique recently uncovered grid lines in Hokusai's The Great Wave that correspond to Edo period construction techniques for tsunami-resistant buildings. Even more remarkable, the wave's famous curves align with fluid dynamics principles that wouldn't be formally described until the 20th century. Similar projects are underway from Cairo to Chicago, where hyperspectral imaging is being used to scan entire collections systematically. The British Museum's Hidden Layers initiative has processed over 2,000 artifacts since 2021, discovering everything from erased architectural plans in Assyrian reliefs to textile weaving algorithms hidden in Byzantine icons. What makes this moment unprecedented isn't just the technology, it's the collaborative scale. The Getty Foundation's Palimpsest project connects 37 institutions worldwide, sharing data from multispectral scans to create a global database of concealed designs. When conservators in Madrid scanned Velázquez's Los Meninas, machine learning algorithms trained on this cross-institutional data identified subtle pentimenti indicating the painter originally included a detailed model of Philip IV's new palace, a miniature architectural blueprint disguised as a background detail. Yet the most exciting breakthroughs may come from unexpected sources. Quantum imaging, still in experimental stages, promises to detect compositional changes at the atomic level without any light or radiation exposure. Early tests on a Botticelli panel in Florence revealed previously invisible underdrawings showing gear systems that mirror Leonardo's unpublished clock designs. Even more revolutionary is AI-assisted tomography, which can reconstruct entire lost layers from fragmentary evidence. At MIT's Laboratory for Innovation in Heritage Science, algorithms analyzing brushstroke patterns across Vermeer's oeuvre recently predicted, and later confirmed, the presence of a concealed camera obscura diagram in the music lesson, its lens proportions matching those in the artist's recovered letters. But with these advances come new challenges. The terabytes of data generated by these scans require novel archival solutions, while ethical debates rage about digital reconstruction's limits. When a neural network completed a partially scraped-away cityscape in a Pieter Bruegel drawing, some scholars argued it crossed into historical fiction. There's also the looming question of accessibility. Will these discoveries remain locked in academic databases, or can they be shared meaningfully with the public? Some institutions are pioneering immersive solutions. The Vatican's ongoing scan of Raphael's Stanze della Signatura includes an augmented reality layer allowing visitors to toggle between the finished frescoes and their underlying architectural diagrams in real time. What awaits us in the coming decade? The next frontier may be molecular archaeology analyzing paint compounds to reconstruct lost techniques. At the University of Bologna, chemists have developed a non-invasive method to identify specific workshop practices from pigment mixtures, potentially revealing how Renaissance artists translated engineering concepts into visual code. Meanwhile, projects like the European Commission's Time Machine aim to create searchable digital twins of entire museum collections, where AI cross-references hidden patterns across continents and centuries. One thing's certain, we're standing at the threshold of a new era in art historical research, where every brushstroke might be a Rosetta Stone waiting to be deciphered. As these technologies peel back layer after layer, we're not just uncovering lost blueprints, we're rediscovering the interconnected genius of civilizations that chose to hide their brightest ideas in the most beautiful places, trusting that future generations would eventually develop the tools and the curiosity to find them. The Louvre's hallowed galleries hold more than masterpieces. They guard secrets etched in layers of paint, waiting for the right light to reveal them. In a quiet corner of the museum's conservation lab, a team armed with hyperspectral scanners is peeling back centuries with a click, uncovering ghostly traces of lost knowledge beneath famous canvases. Take the wedding at Cana by Veronese, a sprawling Renaissance feast scene. When scanned, the painting revealed something startling beneath the banquet tables, faint but precise sketches of pulley systems and winches, mirroring the machinery used to construct the very Venetian palaces depicted in the background. These weren't casual doodles. The angles matched engineering treatises from Veronese's circle, suggesting the artist, or someone advising him, embedded construction secrets into the composition. But the real breakthrough came with Poussin's The Arcadian Shepherds. High-resolution multispectral imaging exposed an entirely different landscape beneath the pastoral scene, one littered with geometric diagrams and Roman numerals. At first, conservators assumed these were compositional guides. Then a sharp-eyed architect noticed the lines corresponded to the proportions of actual ruins near Rome, complete with annotations on load-bearing stresses. It's as if Poussin, known for his meticulous classicism, was using his canvas as a stealthy archive of ancient engineering principles, disguised as poetic allegory. The technology behind these discoveries is as fascinating as the findings themselves. The Louvre's custom-built scanners employ 41 distinct light wavelengths, from ultraviolet to near-infrared, each revealing different layers of a painting's history. Some penetrate varnish to expose underpaintings, others detect metal traces in pigments that hint at erased metallic designs. A Rembrandt portrait, when bathed in terahertz waves, unexpectedly showed a compass-drawn grid beneath the subject's face, a technique more common in architectural drafts than portraiture. Why would these artists hide technical drawings beneath their work? The answer may lie in Renaissance workshop practices. Documents suggest master painters often recycled canvases, sketching new compositions over old ones to save costly materials. But the Louvre's findings hint at something more deliberate. In several cases, the hidden diagrams relate thematically to the surface paintings. A Saint Jerome by Georges de la Tour conceals a diagram of a lion's skeletal structure under the saint's robe, an anatomical study that, when flipped horizontally, matches the pose of the painted lion at Jerome's feet. Similarly, infrared scans of David's coronation of Napoleon exposed earlier sketches of Parisian bridges, their arches mirroring the composition's soaring rhythms. The implications stretch beyond art history. When researchers cross-referenced the Louvre's hidden diagrams with surviving notebooks from the era, they found startling overlaps. The pulley systems in Veronese's underdrawings matched entries in a little-known manuscript by architect Andrea Palladio, while Poussin's buried ruins aligned with measurements in a Vatican engineer's diary. This suggests a shadow network of knowledge sharing, where paintings served as collaborative blueprints exchanged between artists, architects, and even scientists. Not all discoveries are so easily deciphered. Some underlayers resist interpretation, like the cryptic symbols beneath Delacroix's Liberty leading the people, a mix of alchemical notations and what might be musical staves. Others raise ethical dilemmas. When scans revealed a perfectly preserved geometric study beneath a fragile fragonard, conservators faced a difficult choice: risk damaging the surface to expose the underlayer or let history remain hidden. They opted for digital reconstruction, using AI to simulate the buried design, a compromise that sparked debate about how far we should intervene in art's material truth. As the Louvre's initiative expands, next targeting its collection of Egyptian funerary portraits, one thing becomes clear: these masterpieces were never just surfaces. They're palimpsests of creativity and calculation, where every layer holds whispers from workshops we barely understand. The scanners haven't just uncovered lost drawings, they've revealed a forgotten language of art, one where beauty and utility were never truly separate. And with each new scan, we're granted a fleeting glimpse into the minds of creators who knew their canvases would outlast them, and who left messages in the one medium guaranteed to endure, the invisible strokes beneath the visible sublime. 17th century masterpieces might seem like the exclusive domain of scholars and curators, but today's digital revolution has turned art history into a global treasure hunt anyone can join. Online platforms like Zooniverse's Annotate and the Getty's Ancient Graffiti project invite armchair detectives to scrutinize ultra-high-resolution scans of artworks, searching for hidden geometries, faded annotations, or overlooked technical diagrams. This isn't busy work. Crowdsourcing has already cracked mysteries that stumped experts for decades. When a retired engineer in Oslo noticed peculiar grid lines in a digitized Bruegel landscape, her markup flagged a previously ignored layer of the painting. Conservators later confirmed these were precise surveying markers, matching 16th century land measurement techniques Bruegel likely learned from his cartographer friends. The power of collective scrutiny became undeniable when volunteers on the Vermeer's Secrets platform collectively identified 17 instances of pinpricks in the Dutch artist's canvas's tiny holes, indicating where Vermeer used a mechanical device to transfer perspective lines. Before this discovery, historians assumed he worked freehand. Even more groundbreaking was the Patterns in Paint initiative, where gamers accustomed to spotting visual anomalies uncovered a recurring geometric motif in Mogul miniatures. Cross-referenced with architectural records, these shapes proved to be coded instructions for assembling interlocking marble screens, knowledge thought lost after the sack of Delhi in 1739. What makes these platforms so effective is their ability to harness diverse perspectives. A textile designer might recognize weaving patterns in a Renaissance drapery that reveal loom technology, while a machinist could spot the accurate rendering of a gear system in a Dutch still life. The British Museum's Hidden Figures project saw its biggest breakthrough not from an art historian, but from a retired shipwright who recognized the nautical knots in a medieval illumination as exact diagrams for constructing cranes in English harbors. The technology enabling this revolution is equally fascinating. Advanced zoom tools allow viewers to examine brushstrokes at the micron level, while AI-assisted annotation systems flag potential anomalies for human review. On the Decoding Da Vinci portal, participants can toggle between infrared reflectography and X-ray views of the same artwork, comparing underdrawings to surface layers like flipping between blueprints and finished construction. Some platforms even gamify the process. The Louvre's Pixel Hunt awards digital badges for identifying specific types of architectural motifs concealed in backgrounds. Yet the most exciting discoveries often come from unexpected overlaps. When data from the Rijksmuseum's crowdsourced Night Watch Notes project was cross-referenced with shipping manifests from the Dutch Golden Age, amateur sleuths found that the weapons depicted in Rembrandt's group portrait matched custom firearm orders from a specific Amsterdam workshop, a workshop that, records show, also supplied the city's hydraulic engineers. Suddenly, a seemingly straightforward militia painting became a Rosetta Stone linking art, arms manufacturing, and early mechanical engineering. This democratization of discovery does raise questions about verification. Not every flagged anomaly proves significant, and institutions must balance public enthusiasm with scholarly rigor. The Metropolitan Museum's solution. A tiered system where volunteer observations feed into graduate student research teams, creating a pipeline from crowd to classroom. Their Met Collective program has already led to 3 peer-reviewed papers based entirely on amateur findings, including the revelation that a cracked surface in a Goya portrait was actually an intentional underlayer simulating stonework, a technique previously undocumented in Spanish painting. As these platforms evolve, they're reshaping not just what we know about art, but who gets to participate in the conversation. When a high school student in Mumbai spotted Fibonacci sequences in the border of a digitized medieval manuscript, she wasn't just contributing data, she was continuing a centuries-old tradition of knowledge sharing across generations and cultures. The hidden blueprints in these artworks were always meant to be found, just not necessarily by the people their creators imagined. In that sense, today's digital detectives aren't just uncovering history, they're fulfilling the original intent of artists who hid their genius in plain sight, trusting that curiosity would always find a way. You don't need a lab full of high-tech scanners to start uncovering secrets in art. Some of history's most ingenious blueprints hide in plain sight, waiting for anyone with a keen eye and a little patience. The first clue is often repetition. Those intricate tile patterns in a Persian miniature aren't just decoration, they're mathematical models for constructing domes. Notice how the hexagons align perfectly with the arches in the background. That's no accident. Renaissance artists frequently used such geometric echoes as visual breadcrumbs, embedding architectural ratios in floor designs, tapestry borders, or even the folds of a subject's gown. Pay special attention to perspective anomalies. When a Dutch still life shows a table tilted at an impossible angle, or a medieval altarpiece has strangely converging floor tiles, you might be looking at more than artistic license. These mistakes often mask engineering diagrams. The skewed table could demonstrate optical principles for camera obscura lenses, while those tiles might plot stress distribution for vaulted ceilings. Even something as subtle as an oddly placed star in a night sky could mirror celestial navigation charts, especially if it appears brighter or more detailed than surrounding stars. Symbols out of context are another giveaway. A random hourglass in a biblical scene, possibly a disguised sundial calibration, unusual plants in the margins of illuminated manuscripts. Many match herbal remedy diagrams from medical texts. One telltale sign is when these elements appear too precise for their setting, like the meticulously drawn compass in Botticelli's Adoration of the Magi, which aligns with the painting's vanishing point but also matches the proportions of Florence's baptistry doors. Try this technique. Examine artworks through a gridded overlay. Many hidden designs reveal themselves when viewed in segments. The floral patterns on a Qing dynasty vase, for instance, might seem purely decorative until you notice each petal marks a measurement point for the kiln's temperature zones. Similarly, the random cracks in a Jackson Pollock drip painting follow the same fracture patterns used in mid-century bridge stress tests, a nod to his engineering training. Lighting can be your ally. View paintings at oblique angles to catch raised brushstrokes that might trace machine parts, or use a flashlight to reveal subtle indentations where artists pressed compass points into the canvas. Even smartphone apps can help. Photo filters that enhance contrast often expose faint underdrawings, while color isolators might highlight pigment changes indicating erased elements. The key is thinking like the artist engineers themselves. When you see a cathedral's rose window, don't just admire the stained glass, count the spokes. 12 sections might represent apostles, but they also mirror the gear teeth in medieval clock designs. That winding river in a Chinese landscape, its curves could chart optimal water flow for rice paddies. Every artistic choice held layers of meaning, and the more you practice seeing beyond the surface, the more these hidden languages begin to speak. Start with familiar works you love. The details you've glanced at 100 times might suddenly snap into focus as something far more profound. After all, the greatest secret these masterpieces keep isn't in their pigments or brushstrokes, but in our own willingness to look closer. The so-called rule of thirds in art composition isn't just about pleasing aesthetics. It's often a carefully disguised measurement system, a hidden language of proportions that served as practical blueprints for centuries. Next time you admire a landscape painting, try dividing it mentally into 3 equal horizontal sections. You might notice something startling. The horizon line frequently aligns precisely with either the upper or lower third division, not by artistic accident, but because these positions correspond to optimal surveying angles for calculating distances in the field. Dutch Golden Age painters like Jacob van Ruysdael used this technique relentlessly. His sweeping skies occupying exactly 2/3 of the canvas weren't merely dramatic. They mirrored the trigonometrical ratios employed by contemporary navigators to estimate coastal depths. This grid-based encoding goes far beyond simple landscapes. In portraiture, the eyes of Rembrandt's subjects often land directly on the upper horizontal third line, a placement that coincidentally matches the height specifications for mounting optical lenses in 17th century microscopes and telescopes. The connection isn't fanciful. Recent analysis of Vermeer's studio inventory revealed several scientific instruments, suggesting these artists were deeply engaged with the measurement technologies of their time. Even the negative space in a Flemish still life frequently follows the rule of thirds, not for balance, but because the proportions replicate merchant guild standards for commodity display, with specific zones indicating quality grades for spices, textiles, or precious metals. Architectural paintings reveal even clearer evidence of this practice. Canaletto's Venetian cityscapes, when overlaid with a 3-part grid, show an uncanny precision. Building facades align with vertical divisions at proportions matching Renaissance treatises on harmonic ratios, while gondolas cluster at intersections corresponding to mathematically ideal mooring positions. More astonishingly, infrared reflectography has revealed that many of these compositions began as literal grids scratched into the priming layer, with numbered annotations along the lines like a surveyor's field notes. The artistic composition emerged from and often concealed these working technical documents. The rule of thirds takes on profound significance in sacred art. In Byzantine icons, the division between heavenly and earthly realms consistently follows the lower third line, a proportion that also happens to match the structural equilibrium point for dome construction. Giotto's frescoes in the Scrutiny chapel demonstrate this principle perfectly. The horizon sits at the lower third, but so do the weight-bearing arches in the architectural elements, proving the aesthetic choice doubled as an engineering reference. Modern conservators have even found tiny lead weights embedded in some medieval altarpieces at these third points, suggesting artists used them as literal counterbalance systems for the physical panels. Why encode measurements this way? The answer lies in the fragile nature of knowledge transmission before the digital age. Paper degraded, wars destroyed libraries. But a beautifully rendered painting, especially one commissioned by the church or aristocracy, stood a far better chance of survival. By embedding practical mathematics into compositions that pleased the eye, artists ensured the preservation of essential technical knowledge. Today, as we admire these masterpieces in museums, we're not just seeing art, we're looking at the carefully preserved textbooks of lost crafts, their lessons waiting for those who know how to read between the lines. The next time you encounter the rule of thirds in a historical painting, remember, those divisions might be far more than a compositional guide. They could be the silent keepers of forgotten sciences, drawn in plain sight but hidden in beauty. Light in a painting isn't always what it seems. Look closely at Caravaggio's The Calling of St. Matthew, and you'll notice something peculiar. The shaft of sunlight illuminating the tax collector's table doesn't follow the natural angle of the window in the background. Instead, it cuts diagonally across the scene, drawing attention not just to Matthew's face but to the precise alignment of coins on the table. Zoom in, and those scattered coins form a perfect Fibonacci spiral, their placement mirroring the structural proportions of Roman aqueducts. This wasn't artistic oversight, it was deliberate. Caravaggio, who studied engineering manuscripts, often used light as a cipher. His dramatic chiaroscuro didn't just create mood. It spotlighted hidden geometric frameworks, turning shadows into subtle blueprints for viewers who knew where to look. The same trick appears in Vermeer's The Milkmaid. The soft glow from the window bathes the maid's hands and the bread in her bowl. But there's an anomaly. The angle of light on the wall's Delft tiles doesn't match the window's position. Follow those illuminated tiles, though, and they trace the exact proportions of a grain measuring device used in Dutch markets, a tool critical to the economy Vermeer documented. The shadow under the bread basket, it's not random. Its curve replicates the optimal arch for a flour mill chute, a detail merchants would recognize instantly. Vermeer didn't just paint domestic scenes, he embedded the machinery of daily life into the play of light and dark. Even more striking are the shadows in Japanese ukiyo-e prints. In Hokusai's Fuji in clear weather, the mountain's silhouette doesn't just depict dawn, it conceals a sundial's gnomon shadow. The print's original audience could hold it at specific times of day to calculate latitude, using the elongated shadow as a navigation aid. Similarly, Hiroshige's moonlight on the Yodo River hides tidal charts in the ripples of reflected light, with wave patterns corresponding to lunar cycles fishermen relied on. These artists weren't just capturing beauty, they were encoding practical tools into the very physics of their compositions. Why go to such lengths? Light and shadow were the perfect camouflage. Authorities might confiscate a navigational chart or ban a technical manual, but who would suspect a moonlit landscape or a biblical scene? Artists exploited this duality for centuries. In medieval illuminated manuscripts, the gilded edges of saints' halos often cast micro-shadows that, when magnified, revealed compass directions for aligning cathedrals. Renaissance frescoes used strategically placed cracks in plaster to alter shadows over time, creating moving sundials on chapel walls. Even the Impressionists, who seemed to abandon precision, hid industrial schematics in their dappled light. Monet's Gare Saint Lazare steam clouds aren't just atmospheric, their swirls diagram the pressure valves of locomotives. Today, computational analysis is uncovering these shadow codes at an astonishing pace. At the Prado Museum, reflectance transformation imaging RTI of Velázquez's Los Meninas exposed how the artist adjusted shadows around the princess's skirt to outline a hidden architectural grid, one that matches the palace's real blueprints. Meanwhile, AI mapping of Rembrandt's The Night Watch proved the random fall of light across the militia actually highlights their weapons' mechanical details, from matchlock triggers to calibrated powder measures. The lesson is clear: when an old master painted light, they often cast shadows with purpose. Those gradients and contrasts weren't just artistic flair, they were deliberate, layered with meaning only the observant could decode. Next time you stand before a masterpiece, don't just follow the light. Ask where it's pointing, because sometimes the brightest revelations lurk in the darkest corners. There's something irresistible about a secret, the thrill of uncovering what was never meant to be seen. This primal pull explains why hidden blueprints in art ignite our imagination like few other mysteries can. It's not just about the technical marvels concealed beneath layers of paint, it's the sheer audacity of the game itself. Imagine an artist centuries ago, brush in hand, smuggling revolutionary designs into a harmless-looking still life or religious scene, knowing full well the risks. Every stroke becomes a dare, a whispered challenge across time. Can you find what I've buried here? This isn't just idle curiosity, it's hardwired into us. Neuroscientists have found that solving puzzles triggers the same dopamine rush as discovering food or shelter, remnants of our ancestors' survival instincts. When we scrutinize a Bruegel peasant scene for coded windmill schematics or decode star charts in a Mogul miniature, we're not just studying art, we're tapping into an ancient instinct to seek patterns, to crack codes, to prove we're clever enough to spot what others missed. The greatest minds in history, from Da Vinci to Descartes, were obsessive puzzle solvers, and that legacy lives in anyone who's ever tilted a painting to catch a hidden angle or squinted at brushstrokes under museum lighting. What makes these artistic enigmas uniquely compelling is their duality. Unlike a riddle or a cipher, they don't announce themselves as challenges. They exist first as beauty, a radiant Madonna, a bustling marketplace drawing us in with aesthetics before revealing their deeper layers. This double life mirrors our own love of disguise and revelation, the childhood joy of treasure maps and scavenger hunts elevated to the level of high culture. Even the terminology feels thrilling: pentimenti for altered compositions, underdrawings for ghostly first drafts, grisaille for monochrome layers hiding beneath color. These aren't just art terms, they're the vocabulary of detectives. The social dimension adds another layer of fascination. Hidden knowledge has always carried an edge of rebellion, from Renaissance artists smuggling heresy into biblical scenes to Mogul painters preserving engineering secrets during invasions. When we uncover these coded messages today, we're not just solving a puzzle, we're joining a clandestine network that spans centuries. It's no coincidence that the explosion of interest in art mysteries parallels the digital age's love of Easter eggs and ARG's alternate reality games. The human brain craves these layered experiences, where surface appearances mask deeper truths waiting for the worthy to discover them. Perhaps most powerfully, these hidden blueprints flatter our sense of connection to the past. Holding a UV light to a medieval manuscript and spotting erased diagrams isn't just academic, it feels like receiving a direct communication from the artist, a private handshake across time. In a world where so much historical knowledge has been lost to war, censorship, or simple decay, these surviving clues become sacred. They let us play the hero in a story far grander than ourselves, one where patience and perception can resurrect entire worlds of forgotten innovation. Every time we peel back a layer of varnish or decode a geometric pattern, we're proving that the past still has secrets to share, and that curiosity remains the master key to unlocking them. Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code may have been a work of fiction, but its explosive popularity revealed something far more fascinating than any plot twist: the public's hunger for hidden narratives lurking beneath the surface of art. While the novel's claims about the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper were pure invention, they resonated because they tapped into a truth we've seen throughout history. Great art often holds more than meets the eye. The book's success didn't just spawn a wave of conspiracy theories. It inadvertently funded serious academic research. After the novel's release, institutions like the Louvre and the Vatican Library reported a surge in requests to examine artworks for concealed symbols or coded messages, leading to unexpected discoveries. Infrared scans of the Last Supper conducted in the early 2000s, for instance, confirmed that Da Vinci had altered the composition mid-painting, not to hide secret societies, but to refine the geometric relationships between the figures, embedding complex mathematical harmonies that mirrored his architectural studies. The ripple effect of this phenomenon extended beyond academia. Suddenly, conservators noticed museum visitors squinting at brushstrokes, tracing shadows with their fingers, or debating the significance of seemingly minor details. A curator at London's National Gallery recalled overhearing a teenager point to a Holbein portrait and whisper, "What if the skull in the carpet isn't just a memento mori? What if it's a map?" While the speculation was fanciful, the impulse wasn't. Holbein did use precise perspective grids in his work, some of which aligned with surveying techniques of his era. The Da Vinci Code effect, for all its fictional excesses, had democratized a once niche pursuit, turning art analysis into a global scavenger hunt. Yet this newfound scrutiny also birthed wild theories that blurred the line between curiosity and conspiracy. When a blogger claimed to have found a tiny helicopter hidden in the clouds of Raphael's Sistine Madonna, the claim went viral until restorers demonstrated it was a crack in the varnish. Similarly, exaggerated interpretations of the Mona Lisa's landscape background as a hidden map overshadowed the very real discovery that Leonardo used the same cartographic techniques in his paintings as in his engineering sketches. The irony is rich. While fiction spun tales of shadowy organizations controlling art secrets, the actual hidden messages, those pragmatic blueprints and mathematical ciphers, were often hiding in plain sight, overlooked in favor of sexier myths. The lasting legacy of this cultural moment isn't the fictional conspiracies, but the way it reframed how we engage with art. Galleries now routinely incorporate multispectral imaging displays alongside paintings, letting visitors toggle between surface and underlayers. Universities have launched crowdsourcing projects inviting the public to help analyze digitized artworks for overlooked patterns. Even video games like Assassin's Creed and The Witness have drawn inspiration from real historical ciphers, turning players into virtual art detectives. The Da Vinci Code didn't invent the idea of art as a puzzle. It simply reminded us that the most thrilling mysteries aren't always the ones we invent, but the ones we've yet to fully decipher. Perhaps the most telling outcome is how the art world itself has adapted. Once wary of populist speculation, major museums now lean into the intrigue. The Uffazzi's recent exhibition on Botticelli's Primavera didn't shy away from the painting's enigmatic symbolism. It showcased infrared scans revealing the artist's abandoned sketches of geared mechanisms beneath the floral goddesses. The accompanying placard posed a question: was this a discarded idea or a deliberate concealment? By inviting viewers to interrogate the artwork rather than passively admire it, the exhibit honored a tradition far older than any thriller novel: the human instinct to look deeper, to question surfaces, and to trust that every stroke of genius might just be a clue in disguise. The line between groundbreaking discovery and elaborate fiction can be razor-thin when it comes to hidden blueprints in art. For every legitimate finding, like the architectural grids beneath Renaissance frescoes, there are dozens of outlandish claims that veer into conspiracy territory. Take the persistent myth that Michelangelo embedded human anatomy diagrams into the Sistine Chapel ceiling. While it's true the artist studied dissection, the idea that he secretly painted a giant brainstem in God's robe stretches credibility. Computer analysis shows the shapes in question align more closely with drapery folds than neuroanatomy, a reminder that seeing patterns is human nature, but verifying them requires rigor. Not all speculation is harmless. The viral theory that Van Gogh's Starry Night contains encrypted astronomical coordinates led to crowds damaging the painting's edges, searching for hidden layers. Similarly, claims that Picasso's Cubist works conceal anti-fascist blueprints have been exploited to inflate auction prices, despite no concrete evidence. These narratives often share telltale signs: over-reliance on vague symbolism, disregard for historical context, and cherry-picked visual matches while ignoring contradictory details. A notorious example: the assertion that Da Vinci's Mona Lisa hides a treasure map in her pupils, a claim debunked by microscopic imaging that revealed nothing but the artist's masterful sfumato technique. Distinguishing credible research from fantasy starts with methodology. Serious scholars cross-reference findings with period documents, workshop practices, and material evidence. When researchers discovered gear-like patterns in Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, they didn't stop at the visual similarity. They analyzed the pigments against known metallurgy manuals and found matching recipes for brass alloy ratios. Conversely, conspiracy theories often lack this scaffolding. The popular notion that medieval tapestries contain alien technology diagrams falls apart when examined under basic historical scrutiny. No contemporaneous texts mention such knowledge, and the advanced elements usually prove to be misidentified weaving techniques. The psychology behind these misinterpretations is fascinating. Humans are hardwired for pareidolia, seeing faces in clouds or animals in rock formations. This instinct, so useful for survival, can lead us to project meaning where none exists. A 2019 study at University College London found that people shown abstract Renaissance underdrawings consistently found recognizable machines or maps, even when the images were random sketches. This doesn't mean all hidden blueprints are imaginary. It simply underscores why peer review and technological verification matter. The same study also confirmed that trained art historians spotted genuine technical diagrams with 80% accuracy, proving expertise sharpens perception. Perhaps the most damaging consequence of unfounded theories is how they overshadow legitimate discoveries. When a viral video claimed Egyptian tomb paintings depicted modern helicopters, it drowned out the real revelation: nearby grid systems showing advanced proportional mathematics. Similarly, obsession with the fictional Da Vinci Code distracted from the actual cryptography found in his notebooks, where he used mirror writing not for secrecy, but to prevent smudging as a left-handed artist. The irony: many verified hidden blueprints are far more astonishing than conspiracy fodder. No one needs to invent alien architects when the real story, how Gothic cathedrals encoded earthquake-resistant designs in stained glass, is already extraordinary. Navigating this landscape requires both open-mindedness and skepticism. Next time you encounter a claim about secret messages in art, ask 3 questions. Does it align with the artist's known techniques and interests? Is there material evidence beyond visual resemblance? And crucially, does the interpretation enrich our understanding or just spin a sensational tale? The most profound truths often lie not in forced revelations, but in patiently uncovering what the artists themselves considered worth hiding. After all, the real conspiracy isn't about extraterrestrials or treasure maps, it's about how generations of creators outwitted censorship and time itself, embedding their genius in the one medium guaranteed to endure. Some theories about hidden blueprints in art are less about historical fact and more about unleashing the imagination, like the claim that Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel frescoes contain diagrams of alien spacecraft. The idea hinges on a peculiar cloud formation behind God in the creation of Adam, which some insist resembles a cross-section of a futuristic engine. Never mind that Renaissance artists routinely used abstract shapes to represent divine energy, the allure of extraterrestrial intrigue is hard to resist. Even more fantastical is the notion that Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights conceals blueprints for time-travel devices in its bizarre machinery, with the central panels floating orbs interpreted as interdimensional portals rather than symbolic fruits. Then there's the persistent myth that the geometric patterns in Islamic mosaics aren't just mathematical marvels but schematics for anti-gravity technology, allegedly suppressed by medieval caliphs. Proponents point to the concentric circles in the Alhambra's ceilings, claiming they mirror propulsion systems described in fictional ancient astronaut texts. Never mind that these designs align perfectly with period treatises on harmonic acoustics, the idea of lost advanced tech tucked into palace decor is undeniably thrilling. Modern art hasn't escaped speculation either. Jackson Pollock's drip paintings sparked a theory that they're encrypted nuclear codes, based on the coincidence that his abstract expressionist peak overlapped with Cold War secrecy. A declassified CIA memo even noted interest in using avant-garde art as espionage tools, though there's zero evidence Pollock was involved. Still, the image of government agents scrutinizing splattered paint for hidden messages is the stuff of spy novels. What makes these theories so enduring isn't their plausibility, it's the way they transform passive viewing into an adventure. Staring at a Vermeer and wondering if the pearl earring hides a microchip might be absurd, but it keeps art alive in popular culture. Museums lean into the fun. The Louvre's audio guide for the Mona Lisa cheekily addresses the secret map rumors before debunking them, while the Prado's social media team once photoshopped a UFO into Goya's the 3rd of May as an April Fool's prank. The line between playful speculation and misinformation matters, though. When viral posts claimed Van Gogh's Starry Night predicted fractal geometry, actual mathematicians cringed. His swirls were emotional, not computational. Yet even flawed theories can spark real curiosity. The Da Vinci helicopter myth led thousands to examine his notebooks, where they discovered his very real and equally impressive designs for aerial screws and parachutes. At their best, these far-fetched ideas remind us that art's power lies in its openness to interpretation. Whether it's a UFO enthusiast overlaying crop circle patterns onto Raphael's tapestries or a Reddit thread dissecting the hidden circuitry in Hokusai's waves, the common thread is wonder. And in an age where algorithms dictate so much of what we see, there's something refreshing about viewers, no matter how misguided, scouring brushstrokes for secrets, proving that even in our high-tech era, the human love of a good mystery remains gloriously unchanged. These hidden blueprints aren't just curiosities, they're fragile threads connecting us to lost chapters of human ingenuity. Every time a museum scans a painting or archives an underdrawing, they're not just preserving art, they're safeguarding a fragile dialogue between centuries. Consider the recent race to digitize water-damaged manuscripts from Venice's flooded archives. Among the rescued pages were 15th century sketchbooks with marginalia that turned out to be precise diagrams for Leonardo da Vinci's unbuilt diving suit. Had those papers been lost, we'd have no record of how he solved the oxygen circulation problem, a solution that inspired modern deep-sea equipment. This is the stakes of preservation. One storm, one oversight, and centuries of insight can vanish forever. The challenge goes beyond physical conservation. When the British Museum used 3D modeling to recreate a shattered Assyrian relief, they discovered its cracked surface hid cuneiform instructions for building earthquake-resistant foundations. But here's the catch: the digital files were stored in a proprietary format that became obsolete within a decade. The lesson was clear: preserving the artifact wasn't enough. The data needed to outlast changing technology. Now, leading institutions like the Met and the Louvre use open-source platforms to share scans, ensuring that a high school student in Mumbai or a retired engineer in Oslo can access and build on these discoveries. Yet accessibility must walk hand in hand with ethics. When infrared imaging revealed medicinal formulas in the borders of a medieval Jewish manuscript, curators faced a dilemma: should they publish plant compositions that might be culturally sensitive or ecologically hazardous if misused? Similar debates surround indigenous Australian rock art, where some patterns double as sacred navigation maps. The solution isn't one size fits all. The Smithsonian's collaborative approach with native communities, where elders help determine what technical knowledge can be shared publicly, offers a model for balancing scholarship with respect. The clock is ticking on some of these rescues. In Florence, conservators are racing to scan Botticelli's preparatory sketches before the iron gall ink eats through the paper. At the Alhambra, humidity is erasing subtle pigment cues that reveal hidden water channels in the tilework. Each loss is more than a faded line. It's a broken link in humanity's chain of problem solving. That's why projects like Europe's Time Machine initiative matter. By creating searchable digital twins of entire collections, they're ensuring that a researcher in 2050 won't need to rely on luck to stumble across a hidden schematic. They'll be able to trace it through centuries of connected artworks with a few keystrokes. What makes this effort extraordinary is its democratizing power. When the Rijksmuseum released ultra-high-resolution scans of Rembrandt's The Night Watch, a furniture maker in Antwerp noticed the stretcher bars in the background matched joinery techniques from Dutch shipbuilding manuals. That insight led to a breakthrough in reconstructing 17th century woodworking tools. It's proof that preservation isn't just about locking knowledge away. It's about setting it free to spark new connections across time and disciplines. The next great engineering solution might not come from a lab, but from a grad student spotting a forgotten blueprint in the folds of a Renaissance gown, or a gamer recognizing a geometric cipher in a Mogul miniature. The responsibility falls to all of us, supporting open access museums, contributing to crowdsourced transcription projects, even simply sharing discoveries on social media. These acts weave a safety net for humanity's collective genius. After all, the artists who hid these blueprints took enormous risks to pass their knowledge forward. They trusted that future generations would look closer. Now it's our turn to ensure that trust wasn't misplaced, and that the discoveries we make today won't fade into tomorrow's mysteries. Museums are no longer just temples of final masterpieces. They're becoming portals to the creative process itself. Walk into London's National Gallery today, and you'll find something revolutionary next to Leonardo's Virgin of the Rocks, an interactive touchscreen displaying infrared scans of the painting's underdrawings. Those ghostly lines beneath the Virgin's robe aren't just sketches. They're Leonardo's first thoughts, his abandoned compositions, even his mathematical grids for perspective, all now accessible with a swipe of a finger. This shift toward transparency transforms passive viewers into active detectives, inviting everyone to participate in the kind of art historical discovery once reserved for scholars in conservation labs. The Rijksmuseum takes it further. Their X-ray Night Watch project doesn't just show Rembrandt's hidden layers, it lets visitors peel them back digitally, revealing how the artist radically reworked the malicious positions. Suddenly, that static group portrait becomes a living document of creative problem-solving. You can see where Rembrandt painted out a sword hilt that disrupted the composition's rhythm, or how he adjusted a hat brim to guide the viewer's eye. These aren't just technical details, they're intimate glimpses into an artist's mind, democratizing what was once privileged knowledge. Smaller institutions are innovating too. The Courtauld Gallery in London projects multispectral images directly onto the wall beside their medieval altar pieces, using light to resurrect pigments that faded centuries ago. In one striking example, a saint's robe that now appears dull brown suddenly glows vibrant lapis blue in the projection, while UV light exposes a demon's face painted over during the Reformation, a theological edit made visible again. These side-by-side displays do more than educate. They reframe art as a palimpsest of human decisions where every change tells a story. Technology is reshaping accessibility in unexpected ways. The Louvre's recent partnership with Google Arts and Culture created 3D models of paintings that users can dig into virtually, uncovering everything from brushstroke textures to pentimenti, the artist's alterations. A student in Nairobi can now discover the geometric diagrams hidden beneath Raphael's School of Athens with the same clarity as a conservator in Paris. Meanwhile, the Van Gogh Museum's online Layer Lab tool lets anyone compare Vincent's furious revisions in the bedroom, proving even his most iconic works were never static, but evolved through relentless experimentation. This transparency revolution has a profound ripple effect. When the Prado displayed infrared images of Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights alongside the original, visitors noticed something startling. The underdrawings included realistic animals later replaced by fantastical hybrids. The revelation sparked debates about Bosch's creative process. Was he censoring himself, or did his imagination grow wilder as he worked? These aren't academic quibbles, they're conversations that reconnect art with the public, proving that masterpieces aren't sacred relics, but living puzzles waiting to be explored. Yet the most radical change might be psychological. For centuries, museums presented art as finished perfection, hiding the struggles beneath. Now, by showcasing the messy, iterative reality, the discarded ideas, the technical corrections, they're humanizing the creative act itself. Watching Botticelli's Primavera morph across infrared scans, seeing nymphs appear and vanish like ghosts, we don't just admire genius, we witness its labor. And in that witnessing, we're reminded that every great work, whether a Renaissance fresco or a child's sketch, is really just the visible layer of a much deeper, richer story. 21st century technology is turning every smartphone into a potential art detective's toolkit. Google's Art Camera, a robotic imaging system capable of capturing artworks at 1 gigapixel resolution, has digitized over 2,000 masterpieces from museums worldwide, each image revealing details invisible to the naked eye. Zoom into Van Gogh's The Starry Night at this resolution, and you'll find something astonishing. the artist's individual bristle marks form microscopic ridges that align with the same swirling patterns he described in letters about fluid dynamics. What appears as expressive brushwork becomes, under digital scrutiny, a precise study of turbulence, a phenomenon physicists wouldn't formally quantify for another half-century. This democratization of discovery is reshaping art research. When the Rijksmuseum uploaded their entire collection in ultra-high resolution, a textile historian in Indonesia noticed that the lace collars in Vermeer's paintings contained thread counts matching 17th century naval rigging manuals. The discovery revealed how Dutch artists documented industrial techniques through fashion, with each ruffled cuff doubling as a technical diagram for rope making. Similarly, a musician analyzing Klimt's The Kiss at 1200 dpi spotted musical notation hidden in the gilded mosaic patterns, a visual representation of a love song by composer Gustav Mahler, Klimt's close friend. These breakthroughs aren't coming from ivory towers, but from curious minds worldwide who now have access to tools once reserved for elite institutions. The implications extend beyond art history. Google's open access platform has inadvertently created the largest comparative database of artistic techniques in existence. Machine learning algorithms trained on these images can now detect workshop practices like identifying which Renaissance assistant painted a specific cloud based on brushstroke algorithms, or flagging areas where pigments have oxidized differently, hinting at lost underdrawings. The art camera's polarized lighting even exposes subtle surface textures, allowing engineers to study how Raphael achieved his famed marble-like drapery, folds by mixing plaster with crushed glass, a recipe previously known only through fragmentary workshop notes. Yet the most transformative aspect might be temporal. High-resolution digitization preserves artworks in a state of perpetual now, freezing them before environmental damage or misguided restorations alter their original layers. When Hurricane Sandy flooded New York in 2012, the Metropolitan Museum's just completed scans of watercolor manuscripts became the only record of pigments that later faded irreversibly. Similarly, before the Notre Dame fire in 2019, researchers had scanned the cathedral's stained glass at microscopic levels, capturing the exact chemical composition of medieval glassmaking, day to now being used to recreate lost panels with historical accuracy. The true power of these digital archives lies in their unfinished nature. Every uploaded masterpiece is an invitation, a challenge tossed across time and space. That strange smudge in the corner of a Bruegel winter scene, it could be a child's fingerprint, a coffee stain from a long-dead curator, or it might be the blurred edge of a hidden compass mark, waiting for the right pair of eyes to recognize its significance. In this new era of collective scrutiny, art's greatest secrets may not be uncovered by lone geniuses, but by the accumulated curiosity of millions, each zooming in one pixel at a time. These hidden blueprints scattered across centuries of art aren't just historical footnotes, they're proof that creativity and innovation have always been intertwined. Think about it, when Bruegel painted peasants toiling in the fields, he didn't just capture their labor, he embedded the very mechanics of their windmills and plows into the scene. When Islamic artisans traced dizzying geometric patterns, they weren't merely decorating, they were preserving the mathematical formulas that would later inspire modern engineering. Every stroke of the brush, every carefully placed shadow, was a deliberate act of preservation, a way to ensure that even if libraries burned or empires fell, the knowledge would survive. What's truly remarkable is how these encoded designs continue to speak to us today. The same compass marks hidden in Raphael's frescoes now help architects design earthquake-resistant buildings. The water distribution systems camouflaged in Mogul miniatures inform sustainable irrigation projects in drought-stricken regions. Even the textile patterns in Dutch still lifes have inspired new composite materials for aerospace engineering. These artists couldn't have imagined their work would shape the future, yet here we are, centuries later, deciphering their silent lessons. But the most profound revelation isn't just about the blueprints themselves, it's about the mindset behind them. In an age without patents or digital backups, these creators understood something essential. That beauty could be a shield, a way to protect fragile ideas from the ravages of time and tyranny. They trusted that future generations would look closer, think deeper, and recognize the genius tucked between layers of pigment and gold. And now, with every technological leap from X-rays to AI, we're proving them right. So the next time you stand before an ancient painting, don't just admire its surface, lean in. Look for the odd angle, the unexplained shadow, the pattern that seems too precise to be accidental. Because somewhere in those details, you might just find a message left centuries ago, waiting for someone like you to uncover it. The greatest masterpieces aren't just things to behold, they're conversations across time, invitations to join a lineage of curiosity and discovery. And who knows, the next hidden blueprint might be the one that changes